Welcome back to At the Glass podcast. I'm your host, Mark. I am here with my now co-host, George the Greek. We are doing this from his garage, where a lot of these future episodes we do when I'm with him will be from his garage. So we'll have nature's sound in the background, cars driving by. You know, this is for fun. We're going to enjoy it. So before he chimes in here, I just want to say it's going to be a fun episode. As you know, At the Glass, I dabble in with a beverage I'm consuming or other people are consuming, which I will jump back into that here shortly of what I am drinking. But with George the Greek here, which I'll give him a sec to talk, but just the topics we're going to be discussing before that is going to be MLB as the season's wrapped up. We're going to dive in on who we think the MVP CY-Young is and the top free agents and where they think they may sign, or just in general discuss some college football playoffs, Heisman winner potentially in the NFL, just what teams have surprised us, have been bust so far, and who's looking like a front runner to win the MVP for the season. So with that, George the Greek, let's hear it.
Well, hey, Mark, thanks for having me. And hey, you know what? Look, thanks for making me your number two. And I appreciate it. And I think this podcast, as well as many of the future ones, are going to be great. Helps that we're close and we're neighbors, and we both share a passion for sports. So, I'm excited for today as well as any future podcasts. So yeah, let's get it going. Let's have a great show,
Absolutely. So, majority of this podcast will be sports, but we'll also dabble in just other random topics, movies, whatever comes to mind. Like, hey, let's do an episode on this. Let's do it. And it's not always gonna be strictly sports, which it'll be heavily favored sports, but it'll be time and time where we jump to other topics in general. Like I said, this is At the Glass. We want to expand the horizon on people's knowledge on beverages and where they come from and just in general. So for me, this go around, I am starting off with a bourbon from Heaven Hill Distillery, which is the actual Heaven Hill bottled in bond. The color is a golden amber. The aroma, it's a warm notes of vanilla, honey, and rich caramel sweetness. I mean, most of the bourbons have very similar, but taste, it is smooth. I've been drinking this one quite a while now. It's one of my favorite ones. I can easily grab out of my stash and just pour it. It is a little, on the little warm side because it is coming in at 100 proof. So it's not too hot, but it does have a little kick to it from time to time. If you're not careful, can sneak up on you. Obviously, drink however you please. I wouldn't recommend to mix it, but that's just my preference. The taste is like a smooth, warm, and sweet with subtle rice spice note, caramel, and honey mingle with just enough oak and char to round out the richness and the long and lingering. Yes, like I said, with the 100 proof, it lingers just a little bit. It's not terrible. Why does Heaven Hill does sound familiar? Well, they also make other great whiskeys out there too, and bourbons. Elijah Craig is made there. Pikesville, Rittenhouse Rye, and for those that like to buy on the lower end, nothing wrong with that. Henry McKenna too, which is also a great bourbon. They also, this is the store that makes Evan Williams as well. So those that like Evan Williams, it's made at Heaven Hill Distillery. So that's your fun fact for the bourbon today I'm drinking. I'll probably dabble into a beer done here in the Houston area. George Greek over here is drinking St. Arnold, which is a really well-known Houston brewery, which that's not the beer I have. It's from Eureka Heights, which, like I said, I will touch base with that later if I get tired of drinking this delicious bourbon. So I'm done with my spiel on that. So Georgie, so with MLB season being done, as I mentioned, we're going to touch real base on who we think the MVP is race right now. So I want to let you chime in to see what your input is, who you think is the MVP. And I got stats of the top odds on who's going to win. And so it's about 4 or so players for AL and NL. So let me hear what you got for the MVP race.
Well, for me, this is just very simple for both leagues, and I'm just going to dive right in for the people I think that are going to win. And, I don't think it's really even going to be close. Aaron Judge, amazing regular season, putting up the numbers that we're now getting used to seeing what Aaron Judge does pretty much ever since 2017. And I mean, and how about Shohei Ohtani? My gosh, first 50-50 man, mind you, he didn't play on the field. I'm one of those guys that, you have to play on the field for it to truly be earned. But the fact that he's traditionally a pitcher and an outfielder doesn't take away any of his accolades for me this year. So, I know you have the Juan Sotos of the world and you have a couple of other guys that you could, quote unquote, talk about in the top three in each league. But really at the end of the day, it's going to be these guys and rightfully so. They've earned it. They've had great years and good for them. And hey, they met in the World Series. How often do you get to see two guys from your league that are MVPs that are going to play each other in the World Series? So, my hat's off to them, even though I know it's, I guess, not official yet. I think we all know what's going to happen. So, that's my take.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, speaking real quick, having the two MVPs or who will be the MVPs for this season in the World Series, it was kind of unfortunate, not as exciting I thought it was going to be between those two batters at the plate in the series. Judge struggled, which that's kind of been known for his career. He just struggles in the playoffs. And Ohtani, he did fine through normal playoffs. Just the World Series, you just think you have two top hitters in the league going at it, and neither brought spark. I mean, contributed in their own way, but just what they did throughout the regular season. I was looking forward to an exciting World Series between those two guys. But so all good. But we'll start with AL. Like I said, we know Aaron Judge is going to win, but just to give you the other guys that were competing with Judge. So Judge finished the season with a .322 average, 58 home runs, and 144 RBIs. You have Bobby Witt Jr., shortstop for the Royals, batted .332 with 32 home runs, 109 RBIs. Juan Soto batted .288, 41 home runs, 109 RBIs, and Gunnar Henderson, shortstop for the Royals, who batted .281, 37 home runs, and 92 RBIs. So, seeing those stats, I would say still Judge seems like a clear front runner, in my opinion on that. So I think he'll take home his second MVP, correct, Georgie?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to take home that MVP, and again, rightfully so. Now, let me tell you, the other guys that you just named, on any other normal year, if a guy named Aaron Judge or, in the past, a Ken Griffey Jr., a Barry Bonds, anyone else, with the season that Judge put up, you exclude him from this, any one of these guys are MVPs. And that kid out of Kansas City, that guy's got a great future ahead of him. And they all put up MVP-worthy seasons. I mean, that's definitely the truth. But, at the end of the day, Aaron Judge, I mean, and people forget when the season first started, he was struggling really bad. I wanted to say he was hitting something like 122 for his first month. So if you want to put this in theory, he did this. He put together this season pretty much with a month off, so to speak, and he still put this together. So that's incredible. So it makes you wonder, like, what if he would have hit the ground running from day one, But nonetheless, every one of these guys had a great year. Any one of them could have been MVP, but, at the end of the day, on the other side of that equal sign, it's going to be Aaron Judge.
Yeah, like the Royals have a bright future with Bobby Witt there. They already extended him, I'm pretty sure, bought out all his arbitration stuff. So they have him to build around. Like I said, they made the playoffs this year, so if they keep the core nucleus going and sign some key players, they'll be back in the playoffs again. Potentially looking to win a World Series, since last time they won it was 2015, I believe, is when they won the World Series. So, yeah. So bright future for the Royals there. They got it going again. We'll move to the NL candidates for MVP. As we know, Ohtani is definitely the front runner, 50-50. He was one stolen base away from having 60 stolen bases on the season, so he finished with 59 stolen bases. But he batted .310, 54 home runs, 130 RBIs, and 59 stolen bases. Then next favorite odd win is Francisco Lindor, 273 average, 33 home runs, 91 RBIs. Marcell Ozuna with the Braves, batted .302, 39 home runs, 104 RBIs. The other ones, they were odds up there. I'm throwing out there. Bryce Harper was 285, 30 home runs, 87 RBIs, and Ketel Marte, 292, 36 home runs, and 95 RBIs. To go back what you're saying about Ohtani, awesome future to do at the plate, to be able to hit 50-plus home runs and have 50-plus stolen bases. I was talking to my old neighbor, where you ought to know, once I moved into this neighborhood where George is at, he lived on the same street as my parents did way back in the day, so shockingly. Didn't know that. At the time, I think I've already was off at college and moved out and stuff, but surprisingly, he was on the same street as my parents. But my neighbor who lived right next door to me, they had two boys. One was a year older, 2 years, and one was 2 years younger than me. So I was talking to my neighbor back then the other night, and we had the same conversation about Ohtani. He killed it at the plate, but when you look at his MVP, you look at, most of the time they just kind of focus okay, what did they do at the plate? And then all right, what also did they do in the field? But you kind of plays a factor. So it's looking at Lindor, great defense guy, also did great at batting at the plate this year. So where Ohtani was only strictly hitter this year, but generally most years he is pitching, like you said, and so he's pitching every fifth day. When he's not pitching, he's just DHing. So it's just one of those, if it was a normal year, I think Ohtani wins either way if he's pitching or not. So, hats off to Lindor for a killer year as well. So I think he'll win MVP at some point. Could be next year or 2 years, but I do think Lindor eventually does get an MVP. And Ohtani now has an MVP in the AL and the NL. So.
Wow. I totally even forgot about he has an MVP in the AL and NL. And good on that guy. Look, as far as the National League, Ohtani ran away with it. Rightfully so. These statistics. And wow, I didn't realize he had 59 stolen bases. When did this guy become Ricky Henderson or Deion Sanders or something,
Real quick, do you think the bases have something to do with that, the larger bases?
It's hard to know. Yeah, they're a little larger, but.
Another thing, and the pitching changed too.
Possibly. It all possibly does. But the way I view the NL MVP to the AL, let's make it clear, everyone, before anyone jumps on me out there. I am a homer. Of course, I'm going to say Aaron Judge, in my opinion, is the overall MVP of all of baseball. Because I do put a value in playing on the field, or in Ohtani's case, pitching as well. The only reason in my head, at least, that Ohtani gets a pass is the reality is this. We've seen him pitch, and we've seen him play outfield, and we all know he's great at those positions. This year he DHs and he steals a lot of bases, and it's crazy the amount of bases he's stolen. Guys, he's stolen more bases than some of the fastest base runners and notoriously base stealers in baseball history, and he did it. So I kind of feel like it's Ohtani and the rest of the field in the NL. I respect Lindor, but that's a 273 average. What was Ohtani's average again? Was it 323 or
310?
310. I'm sorry about that. I do look forward to when Ohtani either pitches again or plays in the field, because the reality is you use your legs when you're in the field, and especially when you're pitching. I don't quite know if the 59 stolen bases happen if he played on the field. You know, if we're going to put in comparison to Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge played every day, playing center field, taxing his body. Ohtani didn't have to do that. But you can't take anything away from what he has accomplished and his accolades. So, again, great season for both guys. They both put up some crazy numbers, and I don't even think it's a debate. Those two guys are going to win, and rightfully so, and they deserve it. And they both made a World Series, so, you know, hey, hats off to both of them.
Yeah, first time for both Judge and Ohtani to make their first appearance in the World Series. So what you got?
And, you know, isn't it interesting? It's starting to feel like the MVP just gets tossed back and forth between Aaron Judge and Shohei. If you think about it, in 2017, I think Aaron Judge won Rookie of the Year in a close race with Altuve. I believe in a close race with Altuve, I think Altuve won the MVP. I believe the next year, I could be wrong, you could fact check me, I think Ohtani might have won the MVP, but then it was a year or two after that, Judge won the MVP, and then it seems like it's just been back and forth. Maybe Bryce Harper got one in there, but it just kind of seems like Judge and Ohtani are just sharing the MVP back and forth. Again, fact check me on that, but it kind of almost feels that way.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the past MVP, so just excuse me. Yeah, 2017 was a close one. I know everyone is bitter. You're going back to the Astros year that they got hit for cheating and stuff, for stealing signs, and so.
Yeah, that's me.
Well, that's a given because you're a Yankee fan. But we can go down this road. We always have this topic. But to the point, so yeah, Altuve won. I think 2017. I mean, at play-wise, you look at Judge did have more home runs, this and that. Altuve had better average. I think also Altuve may have won Gold Glove that year too. I think might have played a factor into it. So 2017 was Altuve for AL, and NL is now, he's on the Yankees now. Stanton won the MVP in 2017. So 2018, do you think about going back and forth? Really, that it just a coincidental. It would seem like that. But 18, Mookie Betts won in 2018 for AL. Christian Yelich for the NL. Mike Trout in 2019. Cody Bellinger for NL. Jose Abreu in the Mickey Mouse year, shortened because of COVID, for AL. Freddie Freeman for the NL. And then 2021, this is where Ohtani won it in 21, and then Harper won it in 21 for the NL. Judge won it last year, 22 for AL, Paul Goldschmidt for NL, and then Ohtani, 23, and then Ronald Acuna for the NL. And now Ohtani is going to win again, but now he's in NL, so, and then Judge is going to win for the AL. So
I was way off. But, you know, the one common thing you just heard was you heard Judge's name and you heard Ohtani's name quite a bit in a pretty, or if not pretty, an elite conversation, you know, over the last, 7, 8, 9 years, something like that.
Yeah, so it's not like, so we know what Ohtani's capable of doing, so like no one should really be like, oh, he only batted this year. We know he's an awesome pitcher. I don't think he plays much in the field anymore. I think he did a little bit, but that was only because at the time when he came in, before they moved NL to have DH hitters, they had to find a spot for him, and so he would play outfield. And like I said, he's a good defense, but really now I don't think he's going to be playing the field anymore just because NL has a DH spot. So he's going to pitch on his every 5th or so day, and then he'll bat in between, and so he'll always continue to be a hitter, no doubt, and he's proven that he is one of the top hitters right now, and he's fun to watch at the plate. So,
agreed. No, I totally agree. You know, we haven't seen anything like that since Babe Ruth. So, you know, he's putting up Babe Ruth numbers, you know, in today's game.
That he is. So we'll move to the pitching side of things for their top award, which is the Cy Young for top pitcher of the year for the NL and AL. So we'll start with the AL. It's a front runner on this one. The other ones are up there. Just they had good years, not taking anything away. But sorry if I mispronounce. Tariq Skubal, Tigers starting pitcher. He's going to be the front runner on the AL side of things. He went 18-4, 192 innings pitched, 228 strikeouts with a 2.39 ERA. And then second is going to be Emmanuel Clase, Guardians closer. He had 47 saves with 66 strikeouts and a .61 ERA on the season. But and then there was Corbin Burns with the Orioles, 15-9, 2.292 ERA with 181 strikeouts, 194.1 innings pitched, and then just put Seth Lugo from the Royals, 16-9 on the season, 206.2 innings pitched, 181 strikeouts, and a 3.0 ERA. So just reading those stats, I mean, not to take away from Emmanuel Clase with the Guardians and closing it out, but I mean, Tariq Skubal with those line stats, to me, that stands out as the clear front runner for the AL Cy Young.
Well, yeah, Skubal, he's going to run away with it. And remember, the Tigers weren't having the best of seasons most of the year. I mean, they were kind of hanging in, and they were scrappy, and they were doing a lot of things. But it goes to show you, when you have a great manager, and then you also have a solid number one, it keeps you into the season. And more so, Detroit catches fire with, what was it, 3 weeks to go or a month to go or something like that. You know, when you have the manager and the ace, people were buying in all year. It wasn't like they weren't, but you know, they caught fire. You know, something happened. They sparked, and before you know it, they made a deep run. They got into the playoffs. You know, I have a hard time thinking it's going to go to anyone else. You know, so season well done. You know, and you could arguably say Finchie might be the coach of the year with the Tigers, you know, or at least he should be in the conversation.
Don't doubt that Hinch will be looked at as a potential MLB or manager of the year candidate for sure. I surely do miss him with the Astros. He, you know, besides all that, I'm fortunate with Dusty coming in, and he finally got his ring, and Astros, Espada, Joe, being his first year as manager for the Astros, he did decent. I think big learning curve growing with him. So looking forward to another season with him for next year for the Astros. We go back with Skubal and like Detroit. They knocked the Astros out in the wild card round. When we did this last, you know, we projected who was going to win and stuff. And on paper, it should have been like Astros no brainer. But you know what? That's why you play the game. Tigers came out, silenced the Astros, and they got to the divisional series against the Guardians and went to Game 5. I was listening to Game 4, I believe, in Detroit, where they needed to win one more game, and I forget who the Guardians called off the bench or the pinch hit, but I was listening to it, and all I hear is crack. And then the announcer's like, oh, that ball's gone. And they took the lead, and that just sucked the wind out of them. And that reminded me of the Astros when I went to the playoffs game when they were playing the Royals, and they were up 2-1 on the Royals, and they fell apart in the 8th inning at home. And the Royals came back to win that game, and they went back to Kansas City, and Kansas City won, and then they went on to win the World Series. So just hearing that, but Tigers are finally getting their core pieces together. It took a little bit, but like I said, Hinch is a great manager. He's going to keep them playing well, and like I said, it took them, got that last month of the season going, so hats off to them. So with that, we're going to go to the NL side of things real quick for the Cy Young. This, to me, is also front runner. Chris Sale with the Braves, 18-3 on the season, 177 innings pitched, 225 strikeouts, 2.3 ERA. Then Zach Wheeler with the Phillies, 16-7, 200 innings pitched, 224 strikeouts with a 2.57 ERA. Logan Webb with the Giants, 13-10, 204 strikeouts with 3.47 ERA. So really, it's just going to come down between Chris Sale and Zach Wheeler. But with those stats there, I think Chris Sale is definitely the front runner for the NL to win the Cy Young.
Yeah, you know, and I like me some Chris Sale. That guy, you know, I like lefties. and that guy could deal. That's just what it is. And you know, he's been a big piece of the Braves, and I love watching that guy pitch, and good for him. You know, wasn't he in Boston?
Yeah, so I would say hats off to Sale because, right, he was with the White Sox for his first 5 or 6 years of his career.
Yeah, but then he went to Boston.
Yes, and then White Sox traded him to Boston, and then he was with Boston for at least 5 or 6 years, and then this previous offseason, going into the 24 season, Boston traded him to Atlanta, and Atlanta extended him, so he's with Atlanta at least for another couple of years. So, yeah, so hats off to Sale with getting healthy for the season. I know he caught the injury bug right at the end of the season, so he didn't pitch in the playoffs, but he did bounce back this year. So.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when he was with Boston, obviously, because I'm a Yankee fan. He pitched against us a lot, and always loved the way he pitched. He's quick. He could throw hard. I like that he's a lefty. He's got good junk. I mean, the guy could pretty much do it all. And look at the organizations he's pitched for and the things he's done. So, you know, hats off to him as well. I think he's going to run away with that as well.
Yeah, just real quick. So he was with Boston from the 2017 season through 23 season. So, okay. So he's with Atlanta now, and like I said, he was extended right when the Braves traded for him. So Braves have him for another couple of years as well. So if he stays healthy, he'll be at least a solid arm to have for them in their bullpen, or at least a starting pitcher. But there you have it. That rounds out who we think will win MVP for AL, NL, and Cy-Young as well. And we're going to move to at least the top free agents for baseball right now. Being the number one free agent, as we all know, is the man himself, Juan Soto. Where is he going to go, Georgie?
Well, where is he going to go, or where he needs to go, are two different.
Or where does he stay?
Yeah, good point. You know, look, his camp is saying that he wants to play for a contender and he wants to win a championship. And I really hope to believe that, because if that's the case, there's not we know how baseball works. There's only a handful of teams in that sweepstakes, so to speak. The reality is this. He's in a place right now, and he's one of the pieces with the Yanks that it makes the most sense in the world to stay with them. You know, him being in that lineup with Aaron Judge, he's made everybody better. You know, we're in all likelihood going to have to part ways with Gleyber Torres. He made Gleyber Torres better. You know, Gleyber Torres is probably about to go get paid from somebody else because of how he played, you know, especially late in the year, moving him to the leadoff spot. You know, Soto protecting Judge really helped Judge all year. And look, we all thought Giancarlo Stanton was done. And you could arguably say, along with Juan Soto, he was our best hitter in the playoffs. So this guy makes everybody better, you know, and he wants to play for a contender. So I have a hard time thinking he's going to want to go to other places. I mean, yes, there's the Dodgers. I mean, they've been pulling out their checkbook these days. There's no doubt about that. I know the Mets are starving to be good and be champions. And look, they made the NL championship this year. So they might be thinking they're a player or two away. So that might make sense for him. But he has won his ring with the Nationals. So, you know, maybe somebody can question his motivation. Maybe he's saying he wants to go to a contender, but he's won his ring. Maybe he goes and chases the money. And if he does, you know, there's absolutely zero wrong with it, you know, because in this business, you know how it is. It's what have you done for me lately? So we'll see what happens. I mean, and let's not forget the Phillies. You know, he goes to a place with Bryce Harper, and then you plug in Juan Soto into that lineup. That becomes really dangerous. I really don't know where he's going to go. I'd like to hope or think he wants to stay with the Yankees. I know we've been showing him the love, showing him that we want him there. But Hal Steinbrenner isn't the boss the way the boss used to run business. I know Hal Steinbrenner at some point is probably going to have a cap on what he's going to give. And other teams, they're going to love to try to leverage the Yankees and try to raise that price tag to see if they're just going to go get after him, knowing that we have other needs. So we'll see what happens. I don't think it's a gimme by any sort of the imagination that we're going to sign him. I'll give ourselves a fighting chance, but right now his camp is very quiet about it. I've heard some rumors that he doesn't want to re-sign with the Yanks. I've heard some rumors that he does. I don't know what's true. From a business standpoint, I got to say they're probably handling this probably better than anything, So I think he's going to get a max deal, obviously. And, all I could say is I appreciate his time in Pinstripes, and I just hope he comes back. But if not, we'll see.
Yeah, he's going to get a big fat paycheck, either wherever he signs, whether it's back with the Yankees. I think Cole, I know he initially opted out, but then back in, and I know they're going to work something out for him for sure. But I think him staying what he's currently at, I think they look as like, okay, if him doing that, we can work something out for you, which gives us a chance to sign Soto to a big deal to keep him. Like I said, if he doesn't resign with the Yankees, I know the Dodgers' names popped up, Red Sox. I think even the Giants are looking at him, Mets. So I do think it's going to be a team that will be at least making the playoffs for the next several years. That he'll consider signing with, and not a team that's 4 years away from making the playoffs. He's still young. I think he's won 2 rings, but he has that drive in him. I think he wants to be the best player ever to play, and he's going to keep doing that. I don't see him taking taking his foot off the gas pedal there. Just the way the kind of player he seems to me. So,
is it 2 rings, Mark?
Yeah, for Soto. Was Soto?
Yeah.
Sorry, I said 2. Would have been 2 if fortunately the Yankees won. Sorry, that's my fault. He won, like I said, 2019 with the Nationals. That's my bad. But yeah, I do think he has 1 ring, but he doesn't seem like the guy's like, I won, I'm gonna get a big fat paycheck and just coast. He wants to keep producing. He wants to put up big numbers and potentially be a top, MLB player of all time. So. Only being 26 years old, 27 right now, I think. So he's a young cat still, and he'll sign a very large contract with whatever team that may be. Next is a pitcher, Corbin Burns. Had a great year with the Orioles. Like I said, he was definitely a Cy Young candidate, so he's going to get a good paycheck, I believe, as well. He's 31, so I know pitchers are iffy at that age when they are afraid to give out big contracts, but a lot of teams are, I think, leaning towards the 4 or 5 year deals at $30 million or something, whatever they might deem. But he's a big arm if your team's needing a solid starting pitcher. Got down, obviously, Orioles, Red Sox, Mets are all teams that are needing starting pitching. Any team really always can use pitching. There's no doubt about that. So it's just whether they're willing to spend some money to obtain a good starting pitcher and hopefully holds up. So I don't know if you rather him or Blake Snell, because he's a free agent because he opted out from the Giants. So you have those two starting solid base pitchers.
If you're asking me if either one could come to the Yankees, the way I've always viewed it is we could always use more pitching. I don't think there's no ball club out there that could never use more pitching. It's just more of a matter of how we're going to use them and when we're going to use them. But the reality is this: they're going to get paid. They're going to go somewhere. Maybe some of these lesser organizations are going to offer them probably a little bit more than what they're worth. just to kind of solidify their rotation a little bit. But they've earned it. If that's what they get, hats off to them. For some of these big time clubs that already have, for the most part, their rotations down, I have a hard time thinking that a starter is going to take a role in the bullpen and then just to bring another guy in or whatnot. But I'm starting to learn. You've seen worse things, or not worse, but just stranger things out there. So who knows where they end up? But if a ball club's going to pay somebody big time dollars at a 4 or 5 year deal at $30 million, they're going to start. That's just the reality. They will.
Yeah, and if a team wants a player, they're going to hand out the money that they really want that player in the end, or they'll see what the market's going for and see if they can leverage that to their side. That's just baseball's one of those. There is no cap, quote unquote. There's the luxury tax stuff where you go over it, you've got to pay X amount, taxes and stuff. But it's not like NFL where you have a hard cap type of thing. And for those who know, MLB contracts are all fully guaranteed. So if you sign a guy to a big, fat, long deal for 10 years for $350 million, well, guess what? You are responsible for paying that guy unless you trade him, and then whatever you work out with the team you're trading to take all of his contract or part of it, whatever, so be it. So 2 players left real quick. Bregman, won Gold Glove this year. He's a free agent. For me, obviously being an Astros fan, if they want to stay, they're going to be still competitive, but to really have another solid couple years of at least making the playoffs and having a chance to win, they're going to need to re-sign Bregman just because there's a significant drop-off with the third basemen as free agents this year. And the Astros have looks like a promising player coming up, Bryce Matthews, I'm sorry, I should know. Anyway, he was their number 1 draft pick last year out of Nebraska. Came out shortstop. They moved him to third to see how he would do there. I guess anticipating Bregman leaving. That way, if they don't sign someone, they can at least get by with some utility guys, and then he gets called up, and hopefully he produces just because he was shortstop, but we have Pena there, so they're not going to move Pena to third. And so I do hope they can re-sign Bregman. We know what you're getting out of him. Solid defensive guy. Solid person at the plate. Yeah, like his batting average would be a little higher, but hey, he's been consistent each year at 262 to 265, batting 20, hitting 20-plus bombs, and just a solid defensive fielder. So I just hope he doesn't go to your team, George, but I know you would take him in. I know the Yankees fan base don't want to do with any star Astros players just because of everything, but you set aside that, you would have an awesome player at third base or second base, because he did say he'd be open to moving to second, which therefore opens up his book to other teams. I'd be like, well, we didn't need a third baseman, but we can use a second baseman, so that just brings more value to his sake. And like most players, he has Scott Boras as his agent, so it makes it tough.
Yeah, when it comes to making the Yankees better, I'm all for it. And there's that old rivalry, I guess, thing that you're just like, do you really want this guy to play for you? But it's funny. I always tell people it's funny what a new uniform does for a player. I couldn't stand Tom Brady when he played with the Patriots, but funny when he put on a Tampa Bay uniform, all of a sudden it's like, hey, I think I like Tom Brady. Same concept. If I see Bregman in pinstripes and he's helping produce, what has he won? 6 defensive gold gloves. And that's the guy we could have playing third, or like you said, just move him to second, along with Volpe in the middle infield of the Yankees. I mean, I'm not going to say no. And I believe he's a career 275 hitter, which if you look at the production we've gotten on our hot corner, it hasn't been that consistently. So, yeah, he's definitely on our radar. And if it makes the ball club better, you better believe I hope we take it.
Yeah. Real quick with Bregman, he has 1 Gold Glove, which was this year he won. But for his career, like I said, he is a 272 career batting average hitter. So, and plus great defense player. So, That's my take in general. Like, yeah, if he was with a team that something happened, but he's with the team when the scandal went down. But if you look at the full breakdown, he wasn't part of the guys that used that system. He did everything on his own, like Altuve did, and like a lot of the main key Astros players. So, my eyes, he's a straight go-getter, hustles, plays the game how it should be played. So if Astros don't re-sign him, I'm happy. Then I know it's going to stink for us, but whoever does sign him is going to get a great ball player. And so he definitely plays a game with the chip and just loves the game of baseball. So with that, the last other guy I wrote down, there's plenty of other top guys, but then there was talks of Pete Alonso. He's been linked to the Astros. I got nothing against Pete. For me personally, he's hits massive home runs, but to me, he reminds me of another Jose Abreu, in my opinion, and I'm scared that if the Astros sign him, he'll hit home runs more than what Abreu did for the Astros, but I think he batted 242 this year, hit a lot of home runs, but we need someone with a little higher batting average. I'd rather take someone who can bat closer to 270 and hit 20 bombs versus 40 bombs and batting 230, 240, but that's just my take on that.
Yeah, for me, it's team needs. Whatever. If the team feels that they need more power in their lineup, they're going to go after them. But if they're trying to get guys on base and move the ball around and get people home, who knows? You might not be a great fit, but and that's for any team, not just the Astros. So it really is going to depend on needs. In my opinion.
Definitely, because Astros need a first baseman. He can play first base. I'm not saying he's awful by means. He hit 34 home runs, but he batted 240. His WAR this past year was 2.6, so that's wins above replacement for those that are curious what WAR means. But he's, he hits bombs every year because he's hit 53 his rookie year, COVID year in 16, 37, 21, 40 and 22, 46 and 23 and 34 this past year. So he's got a bat. So we'll see. I would like for the Astros to sign Christian Walker. That's just my take. So I'm happy that Singleton filled in for this year, but he's not our future at first base, and we don't really have anyone coming up I feel like can fill in. So we'll see who they go and get. So real quick, we're about to wrap on MLB. Right now, if you had to pick who's going to win the World Series next year, based off if how the team stands right now. So you can't take in consideration Soto being back with the Yankees as a team right now. I know teams got missing pieces, but just looking at who's signed with each team for next year, like your current just guys group there, who do you think potentially takes it for next year?
New York Yankees.
Oh, shocker. With that, you probably be like, but to me right now, just looking at it, Dodgers still have everyone back for the most part. So Ohtani's coming back to pitch, so they're going to be a tough one.
We'll play them again.
Or you have to go through Houston again. Got them. With that, we're going to move to we're going to step over real quick. When we come back, we're going to do college football and talk about playoffs. A little shakeup yesterday. We had the BYU Cougars finally lost on the season, so we'll see if that shakes things up or very little. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come right back at playoffs. Which teams are in contention for the playoffs? Like I said, a little shakeup after last night's games. BYU losing to Kansas. So we'll see if they stay in the picture or they're out of it, and then just everyone else. And so what you got, Georgie?
Wait, did you say college football?
Yes. College football.
Give me a second on this.
All right. Well, we'll keep going. What you got?
Go Irish. Go Irish.
For those I know, that just probably broke the system. I don't think my mics can pick up that for future reference, but I'm just messing with you.
Let's say you're killing me.
For those who don't know, George will touch base here. He's an Irish fan. That was his number one school of choice to go to, but went elsewhere. Nothing wrong with going to Kansas, George. But he's a big Irish fan, so right on you. So.
Yeah, and I can't complain because, every fall I get to watch the Irish, and I loved my time at KU, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. And look at that impressive win they pulled out last night at the Brigham Young University, the Fighting Steve Youngs of the world, the Detmers of the world. I mean, BYU for a small program and question if you say small. They actually have some really good tradition over there, and they've had some great quarterbacks go through there. But what a great win for the Jayhawks, especially to just shake up the playoff picture now. So I was really happy to see that.
Yeah, right on for them. And just real quick, Jayhawks, they were so bad in football. I know this year they're like, oh, they had a great year last year. It's like they should be solid this year. I know it hasn't gone as planned. I don't know exactly just injuries or what with them, but good solid win for them yesterday. All the way around, and like I said, good for you in the sense of Notre Dame's always been a solid program for quite a while now in football. So when football season wraps up, and we go into college basketball, since he's a Jayhawk fan and went to school, he cheers for the Jayhawks and basketball. So he's got that going for them when it comes to basketball for that. And then the Irish, from time to time, they're solid too in basketball, but not as every year as the Jayhawks are. So. With that, we'll go ahead and start. So we have the number one team, Oregon, last night. Squeaked out a win against Wisconsin. Kicked a late field goal to win, I believe 16-13. So looking at them, obviously they went out there, and if they did lose, I'm not sure. I should pull up on who they play next week, or if they lose one game, whether it's a regular season game or the Big Ten conference championship game, they're in the playoffs, I believe. So they're a lock, for sure lock, on my opinion. Next is, go ahead, George.
Yeah, so the Big Ten is very interesting because you have Oregon as the number one team in the country, and squeaked by is a great word of saying that. Going to Madison, Wisconsin on a Saturday night, it's tough to win there, and I think they experienced it because from a roster standpoint, there's no reason that the Badgers should have been on I don't want to say shouldn't have been on the field with them, but Oregon's beaten some much better teams and beaten them soundly. They barely get through Wisconsin. Now, if you look at the Big Ten as a whole, you got Oregon, you got Ohio State. Now, remember, the Buckeyes went to Eugene and barely got out of there, or they didn't get out. They lost, but they lost by 2 points.
1 point.
1 point, I'm sorry. And then you have Penn State, which now is going to probably be, they're jockeying probably for the third or fourth position in the Big Ten. But let's not forget about Indiana. That's still unbeaten in the Big Ten. So this race to the finish line, especially to see who gets into that Big Ten title game, is going to be interesting, and I think it's going to shake things up. Now, here's what's important to note. As well as Indiana has done, their strength of schedule is horrible. I mean, that's the reality. It's horrible. One loss could probably do them in. Now, if that loss comes in the Big Ten title game, and let's just say it's a field goal game or less than a touchdown, they're probably in. So the Big Ten has a lot of moving parts right now between Ohio State, between Oregon, between Indiana, and then Penn State. If they finish out the season where they are, they should get a slot somewhere. So we're looking at the Big Ten right now. We're looking at least 4 teams. So
so real quick. So just looking at. So you mentioned Indiana. Correct. Their strength of schedule has been not very strong. Their strongest game on schedule is next weekend. against the Buckeyes. So that
Is that game in Columbus or is it in Bloomington?
it is in Columbus. So, and I think Ohio State's like 10.5 favorite already. So, looking at the Big Ten standing, so Oregon and Indiana are both undefeated in conference play and undefeated overall in the season. Ohio State has their one loss to Oregon, which was in Eugene by 1 point. They changed the rule after that game because the rule, I forget what Oregon did to run some time off the clock, and I know the quarterback had felt or slid instead of getting out of bounds or something, which, just clock management. But still, I think if they meet again, Ohio State and Oregon in the Big Ten Conference Championship game, which I think is going to happen, I do think Ohio State's going to beat Indiana next week, and so we'll line up Oregon and Ohio State in the Conference Championship game. Because looking at Oregon, they're off next week, and then they finish up with Washington. Washington's not bad. Washington could pull it off, but they're in Oregon. So I think Oregon will pull out that one against Washington in 2 weeks, and so they'll secure their spot in the Conference Championship game. Either way, they're in it, I believe, even if they do lose. But if they win, that's it for sure. So they'll be in it, and I think they go against Ohio State because Ohio State has they have 2 games left, one being Indiana and then Michigan Wolverines, which they should just walk all over them this year because Wolverines aren't very good. So what you got?
Well, so in any particular order, the safe bet is Oregon is going to be in the college football playoff, and so will Ohio State. Now, whether they get that first round bye is really what's going to be the tall tale, because where we sit today, since Oregon is number 1, so technically we're going to, in theory, project them as the conference champion. They're going to get that first round bye, which means the Buckeyes, for as high as they're ranked, in all likelihood, they're going to host a first round game. But guys, that could switch. It could be Ohio State that gets the bye, and maybe Oregon hosts a first round game. But it's important.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Going with the bye, so going with Oregon, Ohio State went out. Whoever wins the conference championship game, it gets the bye, right? So you're projecting whoever wins the conference game, whether Ohio State, Oregon, will get a bye, and whoever loses will host. Go ahead.
Yeah, and for all of those people that are listening, I know the college football playoff format can be confusing, because if you look at their rankings, but then look at where they might have to play, is 2 different things. Remember, the highest ranked conference champs or conference champion will get that first round bye. So in theory, by BYU losing last night, it really opens the table. It might even open the table for a team like Boise State, that even though they were the lowest ranked group of 5 team, depending on where the committee puts them in the ranking, they could end up getting a bye. But for everyone to know, the winners of the 4 major conferences will get a bye, as well as the group. Well, the group of 5 team will get in, but if their ranking finishes higher than a group of one of the top 4 conferences, they could get a bye. So it can get a little confusing, because some people are going to ask, like, how doesn't Ohio State have a first round bye, or how does this team not have a bye? Remember, it's if you're a conference champion, and me being a big Notre Dame guy, Notre Dame right now is in a great position. 2 teams lost in front of them. They were ranked number 8. In all likelihood, they're going to probably find themselves sitting around number 6. It doesn't matter if Notre Dame finishes number 1. They're not in a conference, so that means they're not a conference champion, which means they do not get a first round bye. So when you're looking at the playoff bracket, try not to look at it as like, well, this team's ranked higher than this one. Why don't they have a bye? No, those are the rules. And I got to say, it's making it a lot of fun a month out before the season ends, and here we are just talking about it like it's chaos already. So, and that's kind of what makes college football really cool.
No doubt. Yeah, because I were talking yesterday, like, they're saying Colorado has a shot at getting the bye, winning the conference championship game, and they're ranked 17th or 16th right now. So just to go what you were saying, George, is with the new expanded format, if you're win your conference championship game, you're in with the bye. I do believe Boise State wins out their end because I think they allow one non-Power 4 school into the.
Yeah, it's a group of 5 team, which right now is Boise State. But Boise State was ranked 12th. Now, just think about this for a minute. 2 teams lost this weekend in front of them. Now, I don't know how much respect the committee will give them because of strength of schedule and all that. But in theory, you could say Boise State can move up to 10. Okay, that's still not a big deal. But as the rest of the season plays out, and if they keep winning and then they run the table and they find themselves some way, somehow ranked in the top 4, guess what? Boise State will get a bye over another major conference champion. And like what you said, let's say Colorado runs the table and wins the Big 12 title. It's not that far-fetched to say that Boise State gets the bye and it's Colorado that, yes, they're in, but they don't get that first-round bye. So it's a little, it's wacky enough to make you pay attention and you're loving it, but there's still a lot of moving pieces here.
That's for sure. Yeah, I'm just looking at right now, like projections, ESPN projection. I know there's a CBS. They all have their stuff. I'm just pulling up ESPN right now. So looking at first round games, they're projecting. Keep in mind, Tennessee did lose to Georgia last night. They're out of the picture now. I don't see Tennessee making the playoffs.
No,
I don't think so. They could. I know that was one of the conversations. Is just like, does a Georgia team make it into the playoffs with 3 losses versus a team that only has 1 loss, like Indiana, who lost to Ohio State? And does Georgia go in over Indiana, like that scenario? But like, if you lose 3 games, I'm sorry. Like, I know they're quality losses theoretically. Tennessee, Alabama, and then they lost to Ole Miss. So, yeah, I know those are all quality losses, but you have 3 losses. Unless everyone has 3 losses, but that's not the case. And so, yeah, some teams will have 2 and so forth, but you have 3 losses, you're out of the picture, in my opinion. So with Tennessee losing this late in the season, I know that's only their 2nd loss in the season, but I think that knocks them out, unfortunately. I mean, it could be wrong. We don't know what the committee, they come up with various reasons why they pick teams and not other teams. So it is what it is. But then, and this is just going to keep leading down the road. Oh, let's expand it to 16 teams and 32 teams and so forth. But it's either way. 12 is perfectly fine with me. The who makes it into the playoffs, because after that, it's like really you shouldn't be even considered.
Well, yeah, and if you want the NCAA basketball tournament in college football, I mean, yeah, everyone's going to have a gripe. But I agree with you. You have 3 losses. I feel if you're one of those teams that has just a crazy hard schedule, depending on when the losses happened, if you have a way or a path back, maybe you could sneak in, maybe, depending on what everyone else does, as you said, Mark. But I just don't see it. Now with Tennessee, 2 losses this late in the year, I think it really, really takes them out of the running, especially when you have a team like Texas A&M that's playing their butts off right now. I'm
going to pull up here. I believe if A&M wins out beating, they beat Auburn this upcoming weekend, which they should, and they knock off Texas Thanksgiving week, they're in the SEC championship game against
Georgia.
hang on. I said I'm going to pull that up right now. So I think it's not a long, it's a very long shot for A&M to get in, but it's still doable, I believe. But
I don't think it's a long shot. I don't think it's a long shot. Look at who A&M has lost to.
Well, Notre Dame to start off the season. And
in a close game.
Yeah, it was a close game, and then they lost. South Carolina handled them pretty easily just because they couldn't stop the run game against South Carolina, and then they've been having the QB carousel between Wegman and Marcel Reed. So they're going 3 now. So I'm pulling up the SEC conference real quick, just so. But yeah, looking at right now, Texas and A&M are both 5-1 in conference. Georgia's 6-2, Tennessee's 5-2, Bama's 4-2. So if A&M wins out and they're in, and if Georgia wins out, they're going to be in the conference championship game because Georgia beat Texas in the regular season, and so they get the nod in front of Texas with having 2 conference losses. So that's what it's looking at right now. So. If Texas wins out, you're looking at Georgia and Texas in the SEC Conference Championship game.
And it's really making it fun because with the old guard, with the way things were happening before NIL and all that stuff, like you pretty much could book it. It was going to be Bama, maybe Florida, maybe Georgia, depending on what was going on, throughout that year. And as much... Not a crazy Texas Longhorn guy, and I'm sure I'll get some flack for that. But when they hired Sarkisian, I kept telling everyone, like, this is your guy. It seemed like he needed Texas and Texas needed him. And he was a great coach. It still is. Obviously, he's proving it. The fact that Texas is doing what they're doing, right now, and another thing that I just love for a college football fan is, Elko goes to College Station and he's kicking ass. I mean, he really is. And that game in Kyle Field, Texas better bring their lunch pail and their helmets because he's going to make it tough. He's going to make it physical. And I thought it was a buzzsaw for the Notre Dame game, how loud it was in there. I could only imagine how loud it's going to be in there for, having that rivalry back, the Texas Longhorns against the Texas A&M Aggies. I think it's going to be great. But the Aggies certainly have a chance to get into this playoff. By far, they do. And I would not fall asleep on them. It's going to be interesting. But again, back to the old guard, new guard. It was already predetermined with 2 or 3 weeks in the season. We kind of knew who was going to win the SEC or who was going to play in the SEC championship game. And right now we have so many scenarios. And in a way, that's what's making this college football playoff really, really cool. Just like we have arguably scenarios for 4 teams from the SEC getting in. We have scenarios for 4 teams from the Big Ten getting in. Up until last night, BYU was, I don't want to say shoo-in, but they were right there with, Deion Sanders' team, which we kind of wrote off. They're right in this thick of things. So, this playoff, I have to say, so far, it's making it for a fun college football season. The next 3 weeks should be really fun. Next 3 weeks.
Playoffs? Yeah, so going back to Georgia, they're done with conference play. They have UMass and Georgia Tech left. And so if they do lose one of those games, that only basically potentially I don't know if they get in the conference championship game and win, they're in. But if they don't get in the conference championship game, that pretty much knocks them out, I think, as well from getting into the playoffs.
Do not, if you're a Georgia Bulldog fan, fall asleep on Georgia Tech. Notre Dame had to play them. They gave Notre Dame all they could handle for, I want to say, about a quarter and a half. Notre Dame pulled away. But since then, Georgia Tech's gotten better. And remember, they knocked off Miami, which Miami was, at the time, the number 4 team in the country. And it's a rivalry game. Do not sit here and tell me that Georgia Tech's not going into this game thinking, hey, we believe and we could win this game. So if you're a Bulldog fan, if you think, hey, conference play is over, now we got a little bit of a cakewalk to the end of, to the finish line, got another thing coming.
Think real quick with the Georgia Tech game with Notre Dame, they didn't have their starting quarterback, Hans King, who's been pretty solid. So I think he was hurt against Notre Dame. So, and King played last week against Miami a little bit. They did a rotating quarterback situation. I don't think he's fully healthy, but they went and knocked off Miami, like you said. So, like I said, the selection committee hasn't updated the rankings yet, so I'm just going down. So we touched base on number 1 Oregon, Ohio State. They're in pretty much, I would say, whether they lose one more game, and that being the Big Ten Conference Championship game, I think they're still in because they lost to Oregon twice then. But if they're for Indiana, it's going to be a tough one. Penn State would Penn State, I don't think they had a strong schedule either. Their one loss was to Ohio State.
Well, Penn State's loss to Ohio State, it wasn't a bad loss. They played them pretty tough. I mean, at one point, it looked like they really had a shot to. Sorry, folks. Truck driving by really quick. Give us a second. We're back. So anyway, Penn State played that game in Happy Valley. It was a close game. At the end of the day, the better roster won.
Lost by a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, it was a touchdown, but it was in Happy Valley. The better roster won. But I have a hard time thinking. I mean, I don't know, Mark. Ohio State loses twice to Oregon, and they have 2 losses in the Big Ten, and it's both to Oregon. Do you put them in? I mean, to me, it would depend on how Alabama finished or some of these other guys, so to speak. Do you put Ohio State in?
I still say yes, based on how the committee thinks, because the committee obviously have to give the reasons why teams are in it. So let's say Ohio State loses twice, right? So they lost to Oregon at the time they were number 2 at the time, which now they're number 1. So you lost to a team that was ranked in the top 5 for the whole season twice, right? So where you have a team and they're playing in the conference championship game, where you have a team like Bama who isn't playing in the conference championship game. But I know they have 2 losses, right? One of those being to Vandy, and then another was to Ole Miss, I believe. Tennessee. So they lost to Vandy and Tennessee, and they have OU and Auburn to finish out the season, which they should win those games, which Auburn's being rival and stuff, so it's going to be competitive and close game for them. I think the only why Ohio State doesn't get in is if they just get blown out, which I don't think that's going to happen. So I think Ohio State's in for sure. And Oregon loses. If they lose the Big Ten Conference game, they're still in. So Oregon's in for sure, I think, no matter what, if they do lose one game. So,
I mean, I think Oregon's one of those few 100% safe teams, so to speak. I'm still keeping my eye on Ohio State because here's where it gets interesting and let's look at this scenario. What if Indiana goes into the horseshoe next week? And they might lose, but they lose by, you said Vegas has them as Ohio State as a 10-point favorite, and quite frankly, that's an ass kicking when Vegas puts a line like that. So what if Indiana goes into the horseshoe and maybe loses, let's say, by a field goal or something like that? Now what that does, in my opinion, changes the narrative for all the other teams that are like jockeying for another position, and then Ohio State goes to the Big Ten championship and loses to Oregon again. You see what I'm saying? And so that's why I feel that the A&Ms of the world, the Colorados of the world, like some of these teams that are just barely sniffing outside of the top 12 right now, which teams in front of them are going to keep playing each other and probably should lose, kind of changes it a little bit. So what are your thoughts? Oh, and I think the rain's coming.
Yeah, for that squeaking sound, that's definitely rain coming down in the background. I get your point on that. So, yeah, Indiana barely loses to Ohio State, and then Ohio State loses to Oregon in the conference championship game. Is Indiana still looking on the outside in? I think they're still in, being if that's their only one loss and it's a close loss, I still think they're in.
Yeah.
So I think they're more in than, I know, and then Penn State wins out. That was their only one loss was to Ohio State as well. So I know it's really tough to see. Just looking at it right now, like I said, the committee hasn't released, because I think they do that on, was it Monday? I forget when they do their release. Tuesdays. Okay. So just like, so this is all based up from last week. So Oregon be number 1, Ohio State number 2, Texas is number 3, Penn State's 4, Indiana's 5. BYU was 6, but they lost, so they're going to drop. I was just looking at projections. They still have BYU making the playoffs, so I think they have them winning the Big 12 conference still. So they have them as the 12th seed.
Colorado's. Sorry about that. Colorado, I think, is going to go play BYU. I don't know if it's in Provo or if it's in
Jerry World.
Oh, it's in Jerry World. Okay.
Yeah, so BYU, Tennessee was 7, but they lost. So I know they could still potentially make it in. I think they're going to need some other teams to lose as well to be in the playoff picture. So with that, then Notre Dame as number 8. They went out, which they should, looking at their schedule. They have Army, which they've been pretty good this year. They're undefeated, beating Army. And then they finish up with USC, which USC is not very good this year. So Notre Dame wins out. They should be in the playoff picture as well. So what you got?
Well, yeah, I mean, so that makes it interesting, because when this whole committee came out with the college football playoff, and of course I'm going to chime on my Fighting Irish, how great would it be to kick off the first ever 12-team college football playoff with a home playoff game in December in South Bend, Indiana, with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And come Tuesday, I have a feeling, I could be wrong, Notre Dame was 8, 2 teams in front of them lost. They might get to number 6. If they get to that 6th spot, in all likelihood, they will host. Even if they're 7, I think they still might host. So for the Irish, it's important for them, in order for them to host a home playoff game with that crowd and that advantage. The rest of the field really gets very interesting, where they're going to go, what they're going to do. I honestly, I can't wait the next few weeks. But remember, Notre Dame does play a hard Army team in Yankee Land, actually out of all places, next week for the Shamrock game. And then, of course, they finish up with their annual trip. Not annual, biannual over Southern Cal. Where Lincoln Riley is up in a bunch of shit right now with sanctions that just got given down, and they're not crazy about the way he's performed as a coach and all that. So, but who knows? That's a big rivalry game. USC is going to be pumped up for it, and in a way that could save his job in the season. So it's definitely not a gimme. So we'll see what happens there.
For sure. Like I said, looking at playoff prediction, this is just ESPN. Like I said, take everything with a grain of salt from writers from across all networks and so forth. they have Notre Dame in the playoffs as a number 11 seed. So we'll see. Hang on real quick. Going with your Irish, George, hosting, I was, like I said, ESPN projection. I know they're ranked 8th right now going into this weekend. New playoff rankings have not come out yet, I'm aware. So with that, they should move up, yes. Just like right now, one writer has Notre Dame, like I said, coming at number 11 by the time the season's done, going to Indiana, and they have Indiana as number 6. Another writer person has Notre Dame just staying at number 8 and hosting Bama, who's number 9. So either way, Irish wins out, they're in. Hopefully they stay ranked high enough to host. That'd be a cool atmosphere thing for sure. Playoffs rocking there at nighttime and all that. They have Ohio State being number 5, hosting. Like I said, going with BYU. They win the Big 12 conference. They stay at number 12 seed. They're going to Ohio State. Another one has Boise State as number 12, going to Ohio State. Georgia, number 11, going to Penn State. The other one, like I said, was number 11, Notre Dame going to Indiana. This one has Ole Miss as number 10, going to number 7, Indiana. This other writer has Georgia at number 10, going to Penn State at number 7. Bama 9 at number 8, Notre Dame, and then Ole Miss at number 9, going to Notre Dame at number 8. Again, this is all just projection with 2 ESPN writers for projections, so like to take it with a grain of salt on that. So.
Yeah, but isn't that great what you just said? You know what I mean? Like, look at the games you just said. You know, obviously in the best case scenario, at least for me, Notre Dame hosting a playoff game against Alabama. You know, like how great is that to kick off the playoff? And then think about some of these other games you said. If I heard you correctly, maybe Penn State going to Georgia or Georgia going to Penn State. How great is that?
Yeah, that'd be a fun, like just games you wouldn't necessarily have unless they schedule them as a non-conference game at the beginning of the season. But to have it late in the season and a meaningful game, and like I said, I have this conversation now. Bowl games are not bowl games anymore. Players realize there's too much on the line to lose if they're not a meaningful bowl game. So when you get a guy that is up for contention in the Heisman winning and they don't make the playoffs and they're just going to go play just a normal, even if it was a New Year's Big Six bowl game, a lot of them opt out because there's nothing in it for them because it's just, oh, we won the Rose Bowl. Great. It's not a playoff game. It's not a championship game. But now that he expanded it, it gives a more purpose, more excitement going into it. So that way these games mean a little bit more now versus just because I tell you right now, like with all the bowl games now, like, yeah, it's a reward for winning 6 games at minimum in the season. And it gives a shot for the guys who probably won't go on to play the NFL or seniors, all that stuff as a reward. Yeah, you get to travel, go play fun. So it's still fun to watch, don't get me wrong. But so we'll, with that, and then, but yeah, it'd be pretty cool to see Georgia going to Penn State at night, seeing that, just looking into the stadium there for Penn State and just nothing but white, shirts, jerseys, just all throughout the stadium there at nighttime. And then they go on with like, well, who's number 1, 2, and 3, and 4? Right now they have Oregon being number 1, Texas number 2, Miami number 3, and a toss-up between Boise State 4 or Colorado is number 4, depending. So that's the guys or the teams that would get a first round bye and host. So
it's cool that we're able to talk about this, but let's make no mistake, it's all going to change. And it will. This is welcome to Selection Sunday for college football. Okay, we had it with the NCAA tournament for so many years, and now we're going to get it for college football. This is all going to change, and I can't wait. Who's going where, what's doing what, who got snubbed. who deserves they feel they have a shot in this. But folks, make no mistake, this is going to change.
Real quick, I am migrating from my Heaven Hill bourbon to a beer now. Like I said, Eureka Heights Mini Boss. Like I said, we discuss what beverage you're drinking, whether it's alcohol or non-alcoholic. Just to give you insights of history. So Eureka Heights, another Houston brewery. They've been around. So I didn't look to see how long, but they've been around for a while now. They're a pretty solid beer. They're over in the Heights area. For those considering where's the Heights in Houston, it's inside the Loop, just on the north side of I-10. Almost get into downtown there. So that's where they're at. I am drinking the Mini Boss, which is an IPA by them, and it's a citrus and mosaic hops join forces in this fruity IPA. So, and always my favorite sound when I should do to start off any episode record is the opening of a can. Boom. Going back to the playoffs. So, what you got, George?
Well, what about what I'm drinking?
What are you drinking, George?
I decided to go get involved in some Gentleman's Jack and Diet Coke. So, okay. We're moving.
George is feeling good now. For those people wondering, Gentleman Jack's always a good sipper. Does a job in times needs. It is not sweet like normal Jack Daniels. I can tell you that right now, people. So, Gentleman Jack is good. I can drink Gentleman Jack along with the single barrel Jack Daniels. Regular Jack, it's a little too sweet on my end. But not to get carried away from football topic. It'd be fun, just crazy scenarios like they're saying with Boise State being number 4. It's like, it'd be fun Georgia going to Penn State, right? Yeah. This has Boise State. I don't know what they would do because this school travels where most schools or fan base travels overall, but Boise State in Little Ohio, Idaho, Boise there. They have freaking Ohio State going to Boise State. That would be bonkers seeing a school like Buckeyes go into there in that size stadium. Generally, in the past, like when Rice would host Texas, they just go to NRG Stadium. There's not a big stadium up in that part of the town. There's not. And so for Boise State to host a school like Ohio State would be bonkers. And it'd be a fun atmosphere seeing just the blue turf, nothing but blue, and then Ohio State in their white jerseys and then all that stuff. It'd just be a fun thing to see on TV.
Yeah, but I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great for college football. And make no mistake, those Boise State fans, one time I was on a trip in Denver, Colorado, and I came across some of these Boise State fans. And let me tell you, they love their team, they love their school. And if that were to happen, if you're Ohio State, yes, you're going to travel well and your fans are every bit as nutty as every fan out there. But Boise State will show up. Their fan base will show up. It's going to be cold. It'll be at night. Like you said, the blue turf. Look, remember, what was it, back in the day in what was it, the Fiesta Bowl or the Orange Bowl where Oklahoma loses on the Statue of Liberty play against Boise State? Don't fall asleep against Boise State, in that atmosphere.
That's when bowl games were fun back then. That's when they only had the championship game, and that was it. You didn't have, so now, what I'm getting at is, star players played back then. So you had Adrian Peterson playing in that game. And now, if that were to happen today, Adrian Peterson would be playing in that game because it's not a meaningful game. Championship down the line. He's not going to risk getting hurt in a meaningless game now when he's a for sure top 10 draft pick. So, but yeah, seeing a school you have a Cinderella team making history, knocking off a powerhouse school. Yeah, it's fun. And it'd be fun to see with the expanded playoffs, see that happen today. So Boise State, who's a good team this year, their running backs up for a Heisman bid, and so to see them go against a school like Ohio State or a Penn State team or Indiana, depending if they finish as a 4 seed, to be able to host. So it'd be fun. The other was this one toss up going to Miami now. We're going to shift to Miami. They lost last week to Georgia Tech. When you said Georgia fans don't sleep on Georgia Tech. Because, Georgia Tech's a solid team this year.
They knocked off Florida State the first week of the season, which now we know Florida State is nothing but hot bag of garbage on a hot summer day on the New York City streets. But what I'm saying with Miami, they have them coming in. I was just looking. You know what team is shockingly, I don't know if you've noticed, it's their first year in the ACC. Yep. And they're not collecting any money because the donors are putting all the money front because ACC is like, whoa, you can't just come in here and say, take us. But SMU is up there. And I think they will be playing Miami in the ACC championship game, if I'm not mistaken. So SMU could sneak in as a team for the playoffs.
Did SMU win this weekend?
Yeah, they only have one loss in the season for sure. Let's see. SMU are one loss in the season. They one loss, surprisingly, only was a 3-point loss to BYU. So their one loss is a quality loss so far in the season. All they have left on their season is they're at Virginia and then Cal. So those are 2 winnable games, but that's why you play the game.
You know what? Give me the Pony Express. Let's go back to those days of the Pony Express. And if you're Miami, you do not want to have to play them. In all likelihood, you probably will. That's going to make for a very fun ACC finish. But make no mistake, the winner of that game, in all likelihood, or not the winner, the loser of that game, in all likelihood, is eliminated. They will not be in the playoff.
Oh, for sure. ACC is only going to have one school in the playoffs. And looking at conference standings right now, so SMU's front runner. Clemson is only one conference loss. I'm not sure. How do they determine by rankings? Because theoretically, Clemson wins out. They don't have any more conference games left. They played the Citadel and South Carolina left, so they're done with conference play. They only have one conference loss. That was to Louisville. But then you have Miami, who also has only one conference loss, and they have 2 conference games left, Wake Forest and Syracuse. Does it go to the higher seeded team, if I believe right, that would get the nod to get in? Because I know that was the case back in fall 2008 when you had Tech, Texas, and OU, like top teams, relatively, and then whoever was the higher seed got into the conference championship game. So would that be the case for this then?
I don't think so. Every report and everything I've read and looked at, either has SMU or Miami in. I almost feel like it almost doesn't matter what Clemson does. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen any report or any way that Clemson gets in.
No, I'm not arguing Clemson getting in. I think it's because what I'm getting at is Miami and Clemson both have one conference loss. Going Miami wins out because they have 2 more conference games left. I think the higher ranked team, in this case, since Clemson and Miami did not play each other in regular season this year for conference play, I think the higher ranked team gets into the conference championship game. So therefore it would be Miami and SMU in the conference championship game for the ACC, right?
Yeah, that'll be correct.
Okay. So going with that, Miami, they have Miami winning. They're projecting Miami to win out and win the conference championship game to be in with 1 loss. So, but to answer your question, if Miami loses, either way, if Miami loses, I don't think they're in as much as people want them to be in. Don't know, they've had a good year. Cam Ward's another Heisman candidate. But to see the Pony Express in, just they've had hard times years ago, and here they are in the ACC. And to give credit, ACC's, they have good teams. They're kind of like the Big 12. Solid teams, powerhouses. No, Clemson's kind of fallen off. Miami's good just because they have players that have been there for a while, and Florida State was doo-doo this year. So ACC is not as strong as a conference as they have been in the previous years.
Well, Miami's not there yet. I know Cristobal wants to rebuild them back to their glory days of the U. And they've had a great year. I'm not going to take that away from them. But look, their strength of schedule is not the best. They escaped a lot of near losses. They barely got through Cal. They barely got through a few teams here. And then, the one team that just kind of ran it down their throat, Georgia Tech, which, look, Georgia Tech's game plan is usually very simple. And, for a defense to know what's coming at you, and you still can't stop it, but you're supposed to be, which at the time I think Miami was ranked number 4 in the country, which a lot of people felt that it might have been a little too high for them. Not taken away from their season and where they've come back from. I mean, let's just look back a few years ago. They were atrocious. Miami loses one more game. They're out. SMU loses another game. They're out. Like you said, the ACC kind of has like a Big 12 feel. I do kind of feel, though, that the Big 12, top to bottom, had more quality teams. But in terms of conference championship or possible playoff championship, look, right now, I don't feel that Colorado should be in a playoff. But could they play their way in? And are they worthy because of the rules? 100%, And I'm starting to feel, I'm starting to believe they will, So, but if Colorado plays their way in and BYU finishes out undefeated, we could see 2 Big 12 teams in. I don't feel you're going to get that in the ACC. I think the conference championship team for the ACC gets in. You could say 2 Big 12 teams could get it.
Yeah, it'd be a stretch, but it is possible. If BYU, but I still find it hard for BYU to get in with 2 losses if they lose to Colorado in the Big 12 championship game. I just because of strength of schedule. I mean, yeah, they did beat like I said, the SMU or whoever it was by 3 points. So with that, I don't know if Colorado loses one more game, they're done because that'd be 3 losses on the season. So we'll see how they. So going back with Big 12 conference, like we're talking about. So Colorado, I was looking at it, their schedule. They have Kansas left and Oklahoma State left. Oklahoma State has not won a conference game all year. They more than likely, I know one of the topics is like who's going to get fired for school-wise. We'll get there. I do think finally Oklahoma State parts way with Gundy at the end of the season, but we'll come back to that here shortly. So Colorado, looking at the conference standing for Big 12, BYU losing yesterday to Kansas gives them the first conference loss. This is going to shock you. I'll say shock you. BYU's not a sure-in. I do think they lose. Not that they've been lucky this year or anything by all means. What I'm getting at is that's right, SMU. They did beat SMU earlier. What I'm getting at is looking at their schedule. They have a team that has shocked a lot of people this year as a like, oh, they were bad last year. They play much better. It depends on how they show up next week. They're playing Arizona State. Arizona State, if y'all haven't been following them, they are 5-2 in the conference, 8-2 overall in the year. Arizona State they host BYU. They knock off BYU. They're in the driver's seat, I believe, to go against Colorado in the Big 12 championship game. So if BYU loses one more game, either way, whether that's conference championship game or regular season, they're done.
Well, based on what you just said, that means the Big 12 might only have one representative, and it's going to be the conference champion. And furthermore, didn't you say Colorado still has to play Kansas?
Yes, Colorado still has to play Kansas. I do agree with you. Big 12 more than likely will only have one team representing the conference just because everyone has played each other. Not everyone played each other, but all the teams are equal and beat each other up. They're not playing these SEC or the Big Ten conference where everyone's playing top 15 opponents week in, week out. So as for the Big 12, the only way you're going to have a Big 12 is if two teams is somehow BYU wins out and Colorado wins out, and Colorado wins the Big 12 championship game, and they feel like BYU's two losses, one being in Kansas, which, again, nothing saying about Kansas, great win for them. They're not a ranked team. I just have a hard time seeing BYU still getting in with two losses, one against Colorado and one to Kansas.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now that you explained it like that, the reality is, I think in the Big 12, it's going to be the conference champ. And that's it, which goes back to what I was saying earlier. It opens up the door for the A&Ms of the world, the other teams of the world, because let's put this in perspective. There's 12 teams. You're going to have 5 conference champs, okay, in the playoff. And then...
Sorry, 5. Just real quick. So Big 12, ACC, SEC, Big 10. Who would be the...
Group of 5.
Oh, just a group of 5 in general.
Yeah. That was the deal. It was the group of 5 champ. So 5 teams get an automatic ticket punched. Then it's going to be based off of highest rank, so to speak. That's where, like I told you, the A&Ms of the world. What is Alabama going to do? What is Georgia going to do? We're seeing what Notre Dame's doing. Notre Dame out of that group kind of has the lighter schedule. If they just hold strong, finish their business, especially with the way they've been winning games, they've been blowing people up, they're going to be in it. They're an independent, so they're taking a slot, if you think about it, so...
Slot as the group 5?
No, the slot of the automatic or the invites, so to speak. So 5 people get automatic tickets, 7 get at large, and I have a hard time thinking it's not going to be filled with the Indianas of the world. Maybe the Alabamas of the world, the Georgias of the world. Texas A&M still has a... If A&M beats Texas, are they not in? I mean, to beat that team, to beat Texas, and they finish the season with 2 losses, and that's their final resume builder of the year, is beating the Longhorns. Are the Aggies not in?
Just real quick, I know what you're getting at with the Aggies. They're going to be a bubble team. They do have a shot of getting in if they win out. Now, if they win out completely, they're in as into the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. I feel like they obviously lose one more game, they're not in. There's no picture at all because if you think about it, they lose one more game, that's losing a conference game. They're out of the picture as being in the conference championship game because they go in and beat Auburn next week and they beat Texas. They're in the conference championship game because Georgia's done with conference play. So they're going to play Georgia in the conference championship game. So if they lose the conference championship game, they're not in the picture because that's 3 losses.
So is Georgia predetermined? They're in the conference championship based off of what they've done, even with 2 games to go.
Georgia's in either way because looking at the conference for SEC, Texas and A&M both have 1 conference loss. Texas won conference losses to Georgia. If A&M beats Texas, that's 2 conference losses to Texas, which then Georgia has the upper hand because they beat Texas in regular season play of the conference play. A&M's 1 conference losses to South Carolina. Now, if they lose to Texas. That's 2 conference losses, but Georgia is going to be the higher ranked team going if they win out. So therefore, Georgia is going to be in. And if Bama wins out, then, it's a lot of that scenario into all that stuff there. So it's going to be A&M's. What I'm getting at is A&M's picture into the playoffs is winning out completely. They have to win out. They're against Auburn, Texas, and the conference championship game. They're in. They lose any one of those. Doesn't matter if it's Auburn, Texas, or the conference championship game. They're not in the playoffs. So that's to go to Texas. It's like, oh, they have a good year. At the time, yes, teams were ranked here and there, but it's like, okay, well, they beat Michigan week 2 or 3 of the season, but Michigan's not good this year. Then they beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not good this year. So when you really look at it, like from start of the season to end of the season, right now, the only quality win, if going for Texas right now, is Vandy. Is their only quality win.
Okay, so based on what you're saying, let's say Texas loses one more game, and I'll just pick the Aggies. Let's say they lose to the Aggies. Are the Longhorns in? Right?
I know it's tough. It's like, well, they only have 2 losses. But they lost to Georgia, and they lost to A&M, right? I think Bama's in either way if they went out. And the other team was Ole Miss. Ole Miss wins out. I think they're in. Yeah. So based off, I think what I saw was, as long as Bama and Ole Miss went out, they're in the playoffs no matter what, as that large team. I don't think they get into the conference championship because if Texas wins out, they're going to play Georgia again. And so I say it's just, I know it's all confusing, and saying one thing to this, it could change based off rankings and stuff. So
okay, here we go. There's 5 for sure bids. Opa, ella.
Let it out.
So there's 5 for sure teams. And 7 at large. One of the 7 we could probably say is going to be Notre Dame. So that's 6 teams. So now we are looking at 6 spots.
Sorry, take it back. Bama did beat Georgia this year.
They did. But it backfired on Bama.
Losing to Vandy, right?
Yeah, but also the way Bama made it a game at the end. But at one point, weren't they down like 38-0 or 7?
Georgia was down big time, yes, and then Bama stalled the second half.
It was the other way
Yeah,
around.
Bama was taking care of business, and then Georgia crawled back into it, and then Bama was able to hold on.
But then Bama loses to Vandy, so that's the thing. Bama and Georgia are kind of the wild cards here. And you have Texas that still has to play a very capable A&M team in College Station. It's going to be a buzzsaw on Thanksgiving weekend. I know they didn't put the game on the Friday after Thanksgiving the way they normally do. I think it's going to be a Saturday night.
Yeah, they went away from that.
But it's going to be nuts. I'm curious to see what happens.
Yeah, if it's going to be a rocking time in College Station. There's no doubt about that. It's going to be loud. It's going to be bumping because this is the first time they played since 2011, I believe, 2012, since when A&M made the transition over to the SEC. So it's going to be bumping for sure. Texas is, if Texas wins and they're in the conference championship and then they lose the conference championship game, Texas is in either way. If they lose to A&M, it's going to be a toss-up now because are they still better than the Bama? Are they still better than the Ole Miss? And look at their schedule strength. They didn't beat anyone. Now looking at it, like Michigan at the time was ranked, but also we know they're not good. Going back to because Notre Dame, beating Bama, or excuse me, beating A&M has played in favor to them because A&M's turning out to be a solid team overall this year. So that gives them we beat a good A&M team. So Texas, if they lose one game, if they lose a conference championship game, they're in. If they lose to A&M, I don't see them making it, but I could be wrong. I mean, SEC is we want, viewership, so we'll see.
Well, on a side note, if you're an Aggie fan, this was supposed to be a rebuilding year. You technically had an incredibly hard schedule after losing Notre Dame first game of the year. And look at where you're finding yourselves this late into the year under first-year coach of Elko. With the facilities, the stadium, the fan support that the Aggies have, I would look out for the Aggies. But the one thing I think that's going unnoticed with everything we're talking about is look at the parity in college football that we're having. Whether we're talking about Oregon, which again almost lost to the Badgers last night in Madison, all the way to the 12th team Boise State. And then we're still talking about teams beyond Boise State, the Colorados of the world, the SMUs of the world. There's still so many scenarios to play out. So as I alluded to earlier, it's going to change. It's going to be a lot of fun over the next few weeks. And, let's just sit back and enjoy it. To all you out there that wants to go for your team, yes, back their ass up and enjoy it, and we'll just see how it plays out.
Faux show. So a lot left on the line the next 2 weeks of regular season play and then conference championship week. So I know your team is independent. Real quick, don't go in full LinkedIn conversation. Should Notre Dame, I know they're in the ACC for other sports, but should Notre Dame in football, I know half their schedule is made up of ACC opponents, but now that the way it's gone to being an Irish fan, do you think Notre Dame should finally join a conference play in football?
Well, with Notre Dame, they're lucky. They're at the top of the college football world beacon, so to speak. They kind of, I hate to say it like this, in a way they make their own rules, As long as they keep getting their TV deal from their own private network in a way with NBC, there's no reason for them to join a conference. I know that eventually I feel they're going to have to, but it won't be the ACC. If they do join a conference, I think it's going to be the Big Ten. And
not to cut you off, George, take away from TV deals, all that stuff, solely based on how the selection committee views things. I know they have their own TV deal with NBC and all that stuff, but solely based on, they don't play for a conference championship game. So at what point does, other than loading up their schedule with potential top teams week in, week out to help them, their cost up for half their schedule being ACC teams, do you think at what point do they say, all right, we need to join a ACC, Big Ten, whatever it may be, to be part of that conference championship?
Well, they don't have to, is the answer. And look, Notre Dame's been doing this forever. They've known they've always had to load up. And maybe in the early years they didn't know they had to because rivalries were getting created throughout their time and as they kept building, where it got to a point where they knew they were always going to play certain teams every year no matter what. Yes, when they joined the ACC, for every sport except football, the way they were able to keep their independence was, I believe the rule is you have to play at least, I want to say 8 ACC games. They made a deal saying, well, we'll give you 5 because we still have to play the USCs of the world. We still have to play the Navies of the world. We still have to play these other teams of the world. And then also for recruiting purposes, notice what Notre Dame does. When they go to Southern Cal, Stanford goes to them. When they go to Stanford, Southern Cal goes to Notre Dame. Notre Dame will always find a way to play a Midwest team, whether it's Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M. This year it was A&M in College Station.
5 ACC teams.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, five. Okay.
Yes, you're right, George.
yeah.
I'm looking at the schedule right now.
Yeah.
I counted 5 ACC teams.
Yeah, so Notre Dame purposely does that, and it helps drive the bus. They've always played a tough schedule, even as an independent. So, this year their strength of schedule is light. It wasn't supposed to be that way, but it was. But you could arguably say, out of all the playoff teams right now, they have the by far best road resume builder in going to College Station and beating the Aggies in Aggie Land. But you could turn around and say they arguably have the worst loss of the group by losing to Northern Illinois at home, even though it was by 2 and it was second or third game of the year. I forget what it was. Since then, they've been on a tear, but they still have that loss, So they're going to hold off. They will hold off until they absolutely have to. I know a lot of it's going to be money purposes. I know a lot of it's going to be, we play these certain rivalry games and we always have to play them and all that. Because by joining a conference full time, they will have to play 8 or 9 conference games, which then gives very, very little room to play the USCs of the world, the Navies of the world, other people they've developed rivalries or relationships with over the past 100 years. Those will have to stop. So we'll see what happens. But if they do join a conference, I personally feel it's going to be the Big Ten.
Yeah, just show you now when money's on the play or determines your team gets in the playoffs, old rivalries go out the window. Because look at A&M and Texas. When A&M went to SEC, that stopped immediately. They could have easily had scheduled as a non-conference game to keep playing it.
Yeah, but why would you?
But exactly. So they didn't. As for Notre Dame, they have, I know they're right, but they didn't play Michigan this year. They always played Michigan every year prior to all this stuff, or every other year for the most part, or no, not at all?
Not every year.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a comp. It's a contract that they'll do like every few years. They'll rotate Michigan State. They'll do a home and home with like Ohio State.
A school from the Big Ten.
Yeah.
This year was Purdue, who was doo-doo. But yeah, look at it. When I know you make the schedule, you don't know, like, at the time, like, oh, they were great last year. But looking at it, like, yeah, they played Florida State, who was obviously not good this year. Navy, at the time when they're playing, they were 24th. Now they're not. They're playing a ranked team, Army, this year. So, in the end, Notre Dame's going to do, they can pull their own weight. There's no doubt about that. They're going, if they went out, they're in as a playoff team. So, and as long as they continue to be an independent team and schedule solid opponent teams to help them out moving forward, is as long as their ACC opponents they play are solid throughout the year, will also help them out too. So, so we'll conclude. So we're going to just touch base real quick. So I don't think Notre Dame, if they do join, is because the whole world as a whole rotates to either 2 super giant conferences or 4 conferences in the end, is why Notre Dame ends up being in a quote-unquote conference. By that point, everyone's just independent and everyone's playing each other, and the best teams just get in. So is what I feel like it's heading to. So real quick, before we wrap up college football, Heisman candidates, we're talking. So we have Travis Hunter with Colorado, Dylan Gabriel, Ashton Gentry, and Cam Ward are your top candidates for the Heisman. Who do you see winning that?
Hunter all day long. I don't even think it's close. I mean, maybe Gabriel, but the Heisman is about the best player in college football, the best player, and they usually give that award to a team that has a great record. Well, Colorado is in contention right now for the Big 12 title and has a shot at making the playoff. So he's the best player in college football. I mean, I'll maybe go Dylan Gabriel. Depends how he finishes, but Travis Hunter all day long is my pick.
So I was doing a little research last night, just in general. So Travis Hunter is the favored based off odds if you're betting. So far this year, he has 9 touchdowns offensively wise with 856 reception yards, which he's like, doesn't seem like a lot, but relative considering the statue of player he is, because he is playing both sides of the ball. And then I think for sure he has 2 interceptions, maybe 3 on the year. But just the caliber of player he is, he's a solid guy all the way around. He's going to be a top 10 draft pick. What you got?
Probably number 1 draft pick.
You think so?
Yeah, I think he's going to be up there.
Well, we'll see here after the season, and that'll be a future topic we discuss on At the Glass podcast, George at the Greek. So then the next odd highly favored is Dylan Gabriel, who's got 2,848 passing yards, I believe, 22 touchdown passes to 5 interceptions, and 148 rushing yards to 6 rushing touchdowns. And then Ashton Gentry, Boise State's running back, 1,734 rushing yards to 23 touchdowns. And then Cam Ward with 3,494 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and then 3 rushing touchdowns and 182 rushing yards. So all great candidates. This year it's not a for sure runaway, but I do feel if Travis Hunter continues the path he's doing the next 2 games and gets in the conference championship game and plays very well, I think he does win the Heisman trophy.
I mean, put it in perspective. Let's just say over the next 2 or 3 games, never mind the receptions he gets. Let's just say he catches.
I'm not worried about reception. I'm talking about just yards. So if he only gets 3 yards or 3 receptions for 300 yards, that means obviously 100-yard reception touchdowns. Go for it.
But I'm not even talking that. I'm talking about, let's just say he catches 2 more, maybe 3 more touchdown passes.
Okay, so he finishes with, say, 13 touchdowns on the season.
And maybe an interception or 2.
So 4 or 5 interceptions.
And he's a two-way player. And his team is in the Big 12 title game or even in the playoff. How is he not the guy? I mean,
you're not wrong, George. I'm not arguing at all on that. He is a phenomenal two-way player. He's fun to watch. He doesn't come off like I'm better than you. I'm the, like, he doesn't come off that. He comes off as, I am good. I'm showing you on the field why I'm good. I don't need to talk or post and jibber jabber and do all that stuff. That's what turns me away from players, is just guys who run their mouth. He's clean. He's fun to watch. He plays the game at a high level, and I do, like I said, I think he ended up winning the Heisman for sure, hands down. I don't think it's a runaway, but he does win the Heisman.
And think about this for Deion Sanders. We wrote him off last year, or at least a lot of us did. Look at what they're doing this year. And think about this. If Hunter wins the Heisman and the Buffaloes get to a conference championship game and lose, or even, let's say, get to a conference championship game and win and find their way stumbling into the playoff. What a resume builder for Deion Sanders. And then the question is, do you stay in Colorado or do you go to Florida State? Do you go to the Dallas Cowboys? Like, yeah, you never know. But for a team that we had written off a year ago with all the hype that came in and they didn't produce, he's building a program.
You're not wrong on that at all with what he's done in Colorado. I do. He benefits from bringing a lot of his star players over from Jackson State there and so forth. And then I'm not knocking him by any means. What you got?
Yeah, but think about what you just said. Jackson State. It'd be one thing if you said he was bringing players over from, I don't know, a Florida State or somewhere else. But you don't go to a D1 major program, which Colorado is, even though they didn't play like it was, and say, hey, I brought guys or players from this place, and you think it's going to resonate or rebuild it, but he's done it,
I know what you're getting at. What I'm getting with Jackson he brought the guys he recruited. So when you're talking about Travis Hunter, 5-star athlete, no 5-star athlete's going to go to. I'm not knocking Jackson State or any school that caliber.
I agree.
No one in their right mind is going to go to a school like that. But when you have a Deion Sanders Hall of Famer guy who's there,
Was he a 5-star?
Travis Hunter was a 5-star, yes. So what I mean, you're not going to get a player that caliber on a regular basis. He went there because Deion's been in the NFL. He's a Hall of Famer. He can coach me to get to be able to play at a NFL level. So when he left Jackson State to go to Colorado, good for Deion. He's obviously going to bring his top because realistically, if Deion Sanders said, you know what, I'm retiring from coaching, Travis Hunter's transferring immediately to a Ohio State, Bama,
Notre Dame.
no, whatever it is. Yeah, for your sake, George, Notre Dame.
Or if he has the grades.
Who?
If he has the grades.
To Notre Dame?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not. What I'm getting at is just so. But I'm not knocking Deion. What I'm getting in the end with Deion Sanders, because he went to Colorado. Yeah, last year was a big step up. A lot of those guys had to adjust to a bigger or higher level of playing field versus what Jackson State plays at. So, in the end, Deion Sanders, I see him staying one more year at Colorado. After that, it'll be TBD because obviously his boys and his star athletes are gone. So, what I mean by his boys, his 2 sons. He may stay. I think he ends up stepping down from coaching. He might go to the NFL to be the Cowboys head coach after this year with Mike McCarthy and the way we're about to briefly touch on NFL stuff here. So I just Colorado's done. They obviously play much better this year than they did last year, just because of the learning curve. I didn't think they were going to come in and just wipe everyone clean last year. But the way they've gone this year, they played better. They're doing well. I do think Deion ends up leaving Colorado, not for a bigger college program. I think he ended up going to NFL, or he ends up just saying, I'm done with coaching because I feel like he was in it just to help his sons out and help the guys around him get noticed in the end. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I'm a little older than you, Mark. Not by a lot, but I'm a little older than you. And the reality is this. Deion's a competitor. And it doesn't matter what arena you put him in. Part of me wants to think he's going to stick it out at Colorado to say not only did he bring it back, but he brought it to maintain it. Now, there is the love of going to your alma mater. And people forget, he went to Florida State. He played for Bobby Bowden. And a lot of his coaching style comes from Bobby Bowden. Rest in peace, Bobby Bowden. Now, Florida State is having a shit of a year. And you know that. We all know that. We see it. They just gave Norvell, though, a contract after that season that they just had last year.
They're not firing him after the season. They fired everyone else, but not him.
They're probably going to keep him because they're trying to do the whole buyout of the ACC. And then between that and having to buy his contract out, he might be safe. But what I'm saying to you is Florida State might be on the table. University of Florida might be on the table, but I think that's kind of far-fetched.
One of the topics we're about to briefly touch is coaches for next year. Florida just came out and said they're keeping their coach.
Oh, they did too. Okay. And then there's always the Dallas Cowboys. He was a Cowboy. He loved his time in Jerry World. But remember, when he was in Jerry World was when Jimmy Johnson was his head coach. And now it's a different ball game. You know, he's not going to have control. He's not going to have anything. And Deion's not a stupid guy. He's a man of faith. He does make calculated decisions. He sees the writing on the wall. The Cowboys have not been overly competitive in a very long time. And I think the reason for that is Jerry Jones, and I think he knows it. So why would he want to go subject himself to that? You know, where in Colorado, you have great facilities. You might not be considered, quote unquote, one of the upper echelon of college football. But hey, wins and losses fixes that. But anyone that's been to Colorado, especially Colorado Spring, or no, they're not, they're in Boulder. It's gorgeous over there. You know, he has a good life. He likes it over there. You know, the whole town, the whole community is behind the Buffaloes. I have a hard time seeing him leave unless it's probably for Florida State, in my opinion.
Yeah, Florida State's not firing their head coach this year, at least. If next year is the same as this year, they say, you know what, we're cutting our losses. We'll eat the money like what A&M did with Jimbo. Be done. That's it. And if Deion is open to it, great. We'll see how that goes. Just before we wrap up college football, a lot of the coaches I thought were on the hot seats to get fired this season before the season started have redeemed themselves, stayed on or are being kept on at least till next season. Being Florida's head coach, they'd come out and said that we're keeping Billy Napier, Bayou Billy, as we call him, on for next year. Baylor's keeping their Dave Aranda on staff for next year as well. So they won yesterday against West Virginia to become bowl eligible. So a lot of these coaches we thought, or at least at big schools, there's been firings. Temple just fired their head coach today. Ball State fired their head coach. So there's other programs that have fired their coach. None take away, but as a big school, no one has fired their one. And to come back real quick, I was saying, as I think Oklahoma State finally, to me, says, you know what, Gundy, you've done a tremendous job here for 17 years, however long it was. You know, I know he's a man, come after me type of thing. His famous speech 15 years ago. But a lot of those schools that we're looking at, the only one that might be iffy, and I say iffy, I know they said he's probably okay, is Arkansas's head coach. But overall, I think as far as a big school, all the coaches that were on the hot seat are okay until at least next season. So,
you know, I'm glad you brought up the head coaching carousel in college football, because let me start with this. Isn't it interesting when we had the crazy head coaching carousel? Remember when Brian Kelly said he was leaving Notre Dame for LSU, when his name wasn't even rumored or linked to LSU, but then he leaves the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to go to LSU. Right when that happened, almost simultaneously, within a day or two, it felt like, Lincoln Riley leaves a powerhouse program like Oklahoma to go to USC. Okay? And then, Brent Venables leaves Clemson Tigers' defensive coordinator spot to go to Oklahoma. If you look at that group right now, the only one that's doing great is Marcus Freeman, that got promoted from defensive coordinator at Notre Dame to be the head coach. He has his team pretty much in a solid spot for the playoff. You look at Brian Kelly, can't get along with players, loses big games, but has a really fat, over $100 million contract that they're probably not going to want to part ways with. You look at Lincoln Riley. He goes to USC. He has Caleb Williams that he had to bring from Oklahoma. All of a sudden, Caleb Williams leaves, and what's USC doing now? Not great. You look at Venables. He had Gabriel, which is a Heisman contender this year, goes to Oregon, and now this guy leaves, and all of a sudden Oklahoma is doing bad. So from that coaching carousel, you could arguably say Marcus Friedman, a few years in right now, is kind of sitting on top of that perch. As far as Mike Gundy goes, Oklahoma State, he has given his time to Oklahoma State. He could have left a lot of times to take other quote unquote higher profile jobs. He didn't do it. And if I remember correctly, it's not only 2 years ago, he was in major New Year's Day bowl games. I mean, if Oklahoma State parts ways with him, I mean, is he having a screw up season? Maybe so. Arguably his worst season in Stillwater, but for what he's given that place, do you let the guy go?
I do. Nothing against him. I just think he's ran his course there. I think they needed just a fresh face. He's been there for a long time. And nothing against what he's done there. I think it's just, it gets to the point it's more of the same. It's just like, okay, this is it. And then it's just a repeat from the previous year, either worse or slightly better, but just kind of mediocrity. He just never gets,
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, but when was Oklahoma State ever really considered elite? We would always look at them as, at their best, maybe a 10 or 11 win team.
Going back, looking at if the playoffs were a picture now, back 10 years ago, they're in the playoffs hands down with their 10-2 season, their one loss, on the year, however they were. Just the way things have gone for them this year. And so to wrap up just the coaching carousel, yes, you're right about Notre Dame with Freeman stepping in and doing well. I think nothing to take away at all. I'm not knocking. He benefits, like, a lot of players respect him. He's on staff, so a lot of guys stayed, where, like, going to another program, you got to bring in your guys. Brian Kelly, for example, going to LSU, yeah, he got paid big bucks. He finally can recruit players that necessarily couldn't make the GPA at Notre Dame, where they can, get by with the 2.0 at LSU or whatever the thing. Not knocking LSU's academics or anything like that, but just the requirements, Notre Dame has a higher standard when it comes to academic versus other schools. He might be like, but now going back to Notre Dame they can play a tough schedule top to bottom, but LSU playing just in the SEC hands down, it's just not the same what he's coming from. So as Freeman, yeah, he's done a tremendous job taking over the helms at Notre Dame. A little growing pains for the past season or two, but he's got it together this year. He's got things rolling. So, as for Lincoln Riley, looking at it, he did the same at Oklahoma. He did well, ran his course. USC's like, we're going to pay you the big bucks. And, of course, it's much of the same. He was able to take his star players from Oklahoma to USC, and now they all graduated, went to the NFL, whatever it is. And so his recruiting just hasn't been top-notch. And for Venable to leave Clemson, I mean, all right, you have a chance to go be a head coach at a top school. Are you going to ever say no to that?
Well, I mean, he was the DC for Oklahoma, so he had Oklahoma ties. And, of course, you take that job. And, it's a shame because I really think he wants that job. And he wanted to bring Oklahoma back. It wasn't like they were that far gone or anything, but, I think he wanted them, at the top of the college football world, or at least in the conversation. Because now I'm starting to realize there's not one team on top, as much as even me being a Notre Dame guy, you always want to think you're on top of the college football perch. It's more of, are you in that conversation, with year in and year out the teams, so we'll see what happens with him. I'm not quite sure if he's on the hot seat.
He gets one more year.
Oh, does he? Yeah. So,
They fired their OC already. He gets one more year to at least start out next year. He's definitely going to be on a very bubbling hot seat to start the season next year, depending how the season starts.
what about Gundy?
Gundy's gone after this year, I feel like.
You have heard chatter it's happening or what?
I haven't heard chatter just based off how they've been playing this year, and it's just going back. It's just been mediocrity the past couple of years with Gundy there. And then I know they probably look like, who can we bring in that's going to be better? I think it's just a change of scenery. It might be growing pains. I don't know what to say for Oklahoma State. I just generally think he's run his course there. You know what you're getting out of him. If you're okay with complacency, I think then you stick with Gundy. I'm not saying he's complacent. Maybe. I don't know where I'm going with this. Sorry. But it's much of the same year in, year out at Oklahoma State with Gundy right now.
This is off the topic of Oklahoma State, but since you brought up Oklahoma, and I never thought in my lifetime until Lane Kiffin made it this, is Tennessee a step to get to another job? Just now, when you kept bringing up Mike Gundy, I couldn't help but think of what we just talked about with Venables at Oklahoma. Heupel alumni won their last national championship at Oklahoma. Is it that far-fetched? Maybe not next year, maybe the year after. Oklahoma doesn't have another great year. Is Heupel back and Boomer Sooner? I mean...
I know what you're getting at with that. It's a possibility. I don't think he leaves Tennessee because Tennessee can match money for money, I feel like, from that standpoint, from boosters and stuff. It's just tough because back in the day, I say back in the day, 5 years ago, so a coach would jump because it's like, okay, this is a school that I can prove myself to get to the bigger school. But now everyone's in a power conference, or at least Big Ten and the SEC, so it's just be hard for unless the school's like, hey, we're going to pay you $5 million more than what you're making annually, then maybe the coach leaves. So it's just like everything. It's a different atmosphere now with the NIL, with a lot of the conferences merging together. I say merging, just expanding, however you want to look at it. Because before it's like, okay, well, I'm in this conference. I'm the only power school here. So if I go to this conference, if I do well, I'm in for sure. It's a carousel within itself. As far as to wrap up college football before we jump into NFL real quick, none of the big schools are going to fire any of their head coaches this year. I could be wrong. I think Gundy's the biggest name that probably to say, we're going to part ways and go a different direction after this year, because Florida's come out, said they're keeping Billy. Baylor's keeping Aranda. Any of the big schools out there, they're all keeping their head coaches at least till next year. So I don't see any big shakeup in the big schools. So going with that to NFL, we're going to – all right, so we're going to transition to NFL real quick before we wrap up here. So with NFL coaching carousel, I know you mentioned Deion to potentially coaching and stuff, but just real quick on NFL, since we're a little over halfway through the season now, who's been a surprise and a bust for you for NFL team-wise?
I don't want to say it's a big surprise because of what we all know what Jim Harbaugh could do. Anywhere he's gone, he creates a winner, and he does it very quickly. And it's not like the Chargers had a bad roster last year. To see where the Chargers are at right now, mean, I don't want to say it's a surprise, but usually when a coach takes over, it might take a year or two, and here he has them. Again, mid-season wise, like they're great. Busts. Well, I want to say the Cowboys, but I don't think they're busts because going into the year, I kept telling everyone I don't think the Cowboys got better. I just think that they got more expensive. So from a talent standpoint and what the rest of the NFC is, I don't necessarily think they're busts. I just think that's what they are. I'm a little surprised with the Bears maybe, which, again, I didn't think that they were going to be like Super Bowl gangbusters or anything, but I thought they'd be a little bit better with Caleb Williams. And they dropped another heartbreaker today, and if you take away today and what happened in Washington on a Hail Mary, they'd be in a playoff if the season ended today. So it goes to show you how quick shit could turn on you,
Yeah, it makes sense on all that. I was looking at it as well, like who surprised me, and the Chargers by no means were necessarily bad before. They've had good players, but getting Jim, who's proven himself, he's a coach who knows what he's doing, can get a program going in the right direction, or a franchise in this case for the Chargers. Getting a quarterback who's been there, they've already extended him, so he doesn't have to worry about him leaving, the quarterback for the Chargers. So it'd be Justin there. As for me, as a surprise, I think the Commanders being with the new coach this year, a rookie quarterback. I do think overall, I didn't think they'd be doing as well as they have been. Not that they would be horrible, but he's a good coach. He's coached before, so hiring him was a good call. And to me, it's not a shock, but I didn't think the Steelers would be doing as well as they did. They just beat the Ravens, so they're 9-2 on the season now. They don't really. I know they got Russell Wilson as quarterback. They've been kind of going, and he's back, and then Justin Fields. Overall, I think they've just done better than I thought they would have. Not saying like better, like just out of nowhere, but I do think they are playing better than I anticipated them to be playing.
You're right on the Steelers. That was, I guess that's my surprise of teams playing well. I was going to say them and maybe Washington, but Washington, not so much. They've beaten teams they're supposed to be. A Hail Mary against the Bears makes their record one game better than what they are, which that could have went either way. But if you look at their losses, they're all against good teams. So they're not quite there to make that, at least up until now, they're making that next jump. But you bring up a very, very good point against the Steelers because you didn't know what Russell Wilson you were going to get. But
the fact that it was hurt to start the season and Justin Fields did solid to keep the team going.
Well, he did solid, but he did solid as a backup. He won games, but they weren't pretty. And part of me, I like drama. I was hoping for the drama in Pittsburgh, like, oh, who's going to start and all that. And you got to give Mike Tomlin, an incredible, excellent veteran coach. He put a kibosh to that very quickly. He was like, no, Russell's our starter, And by him doing that, it made people question him. And now here we are 4 games in, and you see the way Russ is playing. And they brought in the old OC that used to coach him in Seattle. Now, Russell had to play a role in this and say, okay, maybe I'm not a typical drop back passer. Maybe I'm not this. Like they basically went to him and said, hey, we're going to build this offense the way you used to win in Seattle. Because in a lot of ways, Pittsburgh right now, the way they're constructed is a lot of the way the Russell Wilson days were in Seattle. An incredible defense, smart offensive play calling, maybe not the best of offensive lines, but you mix and match plays where he is expected to run. And you have to do that in Pittsburgh. You have to, because let me tell you something. They always spend the best on defense, and they always spend the worst on offense. That's what they do. If you look at the last 5 years, that's what they do. The Rams figured out their offensive line really quickly. When McVay got there. A lot of people figure out offensive lines and they spend money really quickly. Why isn't it since Ben Roethlisberger, and even in his last years, the offensive line wasn't great, but yet they always are the top spenders in defense, which, mind you, Tomlin's a defensive head coach. So I like what they're doing. Maybe they realized Russell Wilson was the missing link, because if they were getting to a playoff and winning, 10 games a year ago with quarterback by committee, and now they actually have a quarterback, I think they're actually scary.
Yeah, not to knock on Wilson. I mean, he's been doing decent since he came off being injured for the Steelers. He's not bad by any means.
Look at his numbers over a 4-game stretch. He's in top of the NFL in a lot of categories.
So I think they're going to utilize Russell. 'Cause I was watching today, they use him as a starting, and they're using Fields as a not utility, but they're plugging him in just because he's an athlete and he's a good player. But yeah, Steelers for sure. Not to say they're going to be bad this year. I think they're playing much better than anticipated overall.
I think. Depending on what happens today with the Chiefs at Buffalo that we're currently watching, which we have on at George's Garage, by the way, everybody.
So before we get one of the questions I have, so real quick, bust. Who's been a bust this year? Not necessarily we knew they were going to be bad. Like a team that, not saying going to be like, oh, they should be 9-2, or there's someone that should be at least, all right, at worst 4 losses on the season, maybe 3, but also just dog doo-doo overall.
What do you have?
I know you mentioned the Cowboys. I think obviously they lost Prescott for the whole year. But like I said, I didn't anticipate them being – I didn't think they would be bad before he got hurt. Like, I think they would be a lot like last year. Like, they'll be competitive, maybe to win the division. If not, maybe a wild card spot at worst, being they play 17 games now, finishing 11-6 at best, 10-7 was my thought. Ooh. For the give or take. But for me now, obviously, the Jets, they fire their head coach. Aaron Rodgers he's not Aaron Rodgers anymore. And I knew it was like iffy to begin with when he got there, but for sure the Jets. I saw some Bengals. Not against I think they lead. I saw a stat. If you were to flip all teams, their wins and loss record based off one possession, I believe, or at most a touchdown, the Bengals would be with 2 losses at most in the season. But to really look at it, I think, to me, a team that has just really, had high expectations is and then he's hurt the rest of the season now, which I don't really care because he's a piece of trash in my opinion. He's a terrible person. The Browns, having Deshaun Watson, getting him, and then just not playing well, and he has not played well since he's been there because I think he has settled outside, quote unquote, more cases than he's thrown touchdown passes since he's went to Cleveland. So Cleveland, and then honestly, nothing against them. And then the Jaguars, they had this, with, what's his face, the quarterback there, Sunshine. Just being there, they definitely haven't been playing this well. They always seem to get one year where they do well, and then they fall off, and then it's just like. So I don't know. It's just between Jets, Browns, and the Jaguars. Bengals, it's kind of been a toss up. They had a chance to be good. They're iffy. So, but yeah, it's those teams for me are kind of been like, okay, y'all should be better. Not saying obviously best in the league, but better than what they're currently doing.
Well, think about all those teams that you just talked about.
Trevor Lawrence, that's what I'm thinking of.
Well, think about all those teams you just mentioned. And I've always been of a strong belief that what makes a winning organization is your owner upstairs. Now, that's not always going to be great. You might have an owner that wants to do way too much, i.e. Jerry Jones. But you always have an owner like that. But when your ownership and your general manager's office and your head coaching office is all on point, along with a proper quarterback, usually everything falls into place. Now, hence, the Steelers are an incredible organization, and they always have been. They'd been down a little bit, but look at what was wrong with them. Recently, since Big Ben, their quarterback situation's been off, and they don't spend a lot of money on offensive line, okay? But they have a great ownership, and they have a great GM, and they have a great head coach. They enter Russell Wilson, which I'm not going to say is amazing, but hey, through 4 games that he's played and through this point in the season, he's probably a top 10 quarterback, okay? And what are they doing? Winning games. What did they do last year, even with garbage quarterback play? They got to a playoff. So
Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. So they got to a playoff. But look at the rest of the teams you just named. The New York Fighting Jets. Horrible ownership. They changed GM and coaches and then they go and get Aaron Rodgers, which we all knew was on the tail end of his career, for a crazy amount of money. That just came off an Achilles heel injury. Did you honestly think the Jets, the one guy they fired that could keep the whole thing together was Robert Saleh, and they fired him. So,
Yeah, I mean, nothing against Robert. He's a defensive-minded guy. He's a defensive coach because he was DC at 49ers before taking the Jets.
yeah, but he was the best. But he was the best coach on their coaching staff, even if he was the head coach.
No, yeah, I get that. So, that's just football for you, NFL.
Let's not forget about the Cleveland Browns.
I mean, I'm enjoying it as a Texan standpoint because we were able to get great draft picks because of them training for Deshaun Watson.
When a player tells you, I'll go anywhere else, but I just don't want to play for the Browns. Isn't that code for maybe we shouldn't go after this guy knowing he's got a bunch of garbage personally under his belt, but instead you throw money at him?
Well, that's where they messed up because
And then
they gave him the full guaranteed
you
contract.
give him a full. So not only did he say, I don't want to go here, to convince him to go here, you already know he's got baggage, and then give him the full bag. And it sucks, and I feel bad for Cleveland fans and players because roster-wise, they could probably compete with anyone when it comes to talent-wise at roster positions on the field. It's nuts what Cleveland did. So I'm going to say Jets, Browns, Jags. Well, they're the Jags. Cowboys are, until Jerry retires or bounces out, I think they're going to be the same. So,
Yeah, for the Cowboys, Jerry's going to, I'm not to be morbid or anything, when his time's come and he's no longer there, Cowboys can finally maybe operate as what an organization should be able to do. Let the GM do the job he's supposed to do, and not. I mean, owner should be involved to a certain extent, but if you're going to get involved to that level, it's just like you're not going to, because you're doing on your gut feeling. I'm not saying owners don't have insight, but the point of GM is they're the ones that's supposed to get a team built, and you're relying on them to do that. And if they don't, that's why you fire them. Jerry is the GM for the Cowboys.
I mean, look at the Texans. And I'm not even a Texans fan, but look at what they did. They had the owner that had somebody else whispering in his ear. They were a garbage organization.
Freaking snake, Jack Esterby.
Yeah, but they were a garbage organization for a lot of years. Finally, the owner decided to wise up and say, hey, let me hire a smart front office person. Let me do this. And look at what the Texans have. Oh, look, I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl team right now, but I can tell you this. I think they have a window open right now, and it's because the ownership is supporting the general manager's office, which we're now proving. I mean, that dude did a modern day, the movie Draft Day. He did it on draft night about 2 years ago. And they have a great head coach in DeMeco Ryans, upcoming young head coach at that. And they have a quarterback. This organization is going to be the next 5 to 8 years. Better watch out for these guys. And I'm not even a Texans fan, but they have all the stars right now aligned properly for them. It's hard to think that, they're not going to be a serious contender here soon.
Yeah, Nick's done a great job coming in as GM and fixing the massive cluster mess that, as we jokingly said, we had Bill O'Brien as the head coach, and then we took over GM. We called him William O'Brien because he had 2 alter egos. So, but he's done a great job cleaning up that mess. There's still some questionable stuff that players that he extended that, it is what it is. But yes, there's the window there. If they can keep playing well and not a player regress, they have a shot to be a dominant team and be contenders here in the next couple of years. And with DeMeco being there, so future's looking bright for the Texans with what they have there. Real quick, we are watching the Chiefs and the Bills game right now. The Chiefs are still 9-0 in the season. Do they finish out being undefeated?
No.
I agree with you. They barely escaped by with some games, questionable calls by the refs in favor of them and so forth. Chiefs will, if they were to lose, it could be the Bills game right now because they're in Buffalo. I do think they lose a couple more games throughout the season. They're not going to go undefeated throughout the season. That's just a very hard thing to do in NFL, respectively. So with that, real quick before we get on, we're wrapping up here with our topics. With the way teams are playing, who do you see in the Super Bowl, real quick, George?
Wow. The Lions, Detroit Lions, and man, hard to go against the Chiefs, but I'll go Lions, Bills.
Yeah, Chiefs obviously undefeated right now, but Mahomes is not playing at the level as he has been this year. I'm not saying he's regressing, but just overall his career, just this year alone, he's not performed to the level that he has been the past few years. That's due to injuries throughout their team. A lot of their top wide receivers are out for the year and stuff, but they're doing well with what they have. So kudos to them, and they're going to be in the playoffs. I'm with you, Bills. I always say Bills. This is their year. They got it going. They have 2 losses on the season. They're playing well. Baltimore just lost today to Steelers. Steelers could be like we were just talking about. So we'll see. I do think Detroit is finally, over that hurdle. They're just playing lights out.
Yeah, and look, today's a big NFL football weekend. If the Chiefs lose today, it brings them back to reality. You have the Bills, and now you have the Steelers, which, in my opinion, are the best 3 teams in the AFC. Sorry. I think the Lions will run away with it eventually in the NFC. But yeah, in order to have a rivalry like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, which is kind of what Mahomes and Allen is shaping up to be, you need the other guy to win. And at this point, I think it's Josh Allen's time. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But today's a big football Sunday. We'll see. We're probably gonna be talking about it here in a few weeks.
Absolutely. Like I said, we're a little over halfway through the season, so as we conclude this episode, we'll talk about NFL and then probably quickly wrap up the college football season. If we don't do one before then, we're going to be entering college basketball territory, so we'll touch base with all the top teams there. So we'll see how this goes. What you got?
Well, yes, we have to finish with football, but so all of our listeners can have a great understanding. Rock Talk Jayhawk when we get to college basketball, but again, we still have a long way to go with college football playoffs and NFL. So thank you all.
Yeah, so as we conclude this, like I said, college basketball will be after college football. When we dive into that, be in the middle conference play or the start of conference for all college basketball. So we'll definitely do a good deep in with college football and the NFL still prior to that. It's been a pleasure, George at the Greek. It's been fun, as always, doing you as a co-host. So as for the fans out there, soon-to-be fans, jump on. Like I said, this is fun. It's not supposed to be all seriousness things, because I can tell you we're doing this in the garage. So you hear a car driving by right now. You can hear the rain coming down. So be it. But as I always say, if you have any questions, feel free to chime in. Send us stuff. Shoot us an email it's at theglasspodcast@gmail.com. That's ATTHE glass podcast@gmail.com. Not that symbol, just at theglasspodcast @gmail.com. So feel free to send us whatever. We'll try to answer questions or to shoot you back a message. Anything else, George, you got?
Yeah, real simple. Opa!
Yes, Ompa. And as always, we be sipping, and thanks for listening in. And until next time, behave yourselves.